Chapter 920. Yiguchin didn't know much about the 5 great colleges. However, he knew that Sacred Cliff College was ranked at the bottom among the 5 great colleges. Although the Sword Dynasty can't be compared to those Hegemon-level forces with tens of thousands of years of history, we still have a long history. When the Sword Dynasty was first established, Sacred Cliff College was already established. After that, the other 4 colleges were established on the basis of Sacred Cliff College. Bei Xian Elder was quite proud of this period of history. Then now, why? Yiguchin paused. Sigh, it's all because of those fake saint families. Forget it, you'll know when the time comes. Bei Xian Elder was a little dispirited when he mentioned this. Yiguchin saw this and didn't ask any more questions. Anyway, he would know what he needed to know in the future. The ship stopped outside the Holy Cliff Cave, and everyone disembarked. Bei Xian, I'll leave these people to you. After Elder Ime finished speaking, he floated away. Everyone, follow me. Bei Xian Elder waved his hand. Yiguchin and the others followed Bei Xian Elder into the Holy Cliff Cave. As a famous treasure land of the Sword Dynasty, the Holy Cliff Cave was full of spirit chi and precious herbs, and rare flowers were everywhere. Supreme-grade precious herbs could be seen everywhere. Even Yiguchin was speechless when he saw this. Ha! The Hua family and the other aristocratic families are very jealous of this Holy Cliff Cave. Bei Xian Elder sneered. Yiguchin's eyes dimmed. It seemed that Sacred Cliff College wasn't completely safe. Not long after, Yiguchin saw 2 towering mountains in front of him. One of the mountains had the word divine carved on it, and the other had the word cliff carved on it. Between the 2 strange peaks, there was a huge ancient mountain gate. At this moment, inside the mountain gate, there was a large crowd of people. They were obviously the disciples of Sacred Cliff College. Looking at the crowd, Yiguchin sighed. Although Sacred Cliff College was ranked last among the 5 major colleges, there were still quite a number of prodigies among them. Is that the sword demon Dugawubai? He doesn't seem to have 3 heads and 6 arms. TSK. That Dugawubai is so handsome. I heard that he was called the sword demon, but I thought he was just a rough man with a scar on his face. As soon as Yiguchin appeared, he immediately caused a commotion among many Sacred Cliff College disciples. Some of the female disciples looked at Yiguchin with sparkling eyes. In just a few days, the news of what had happened in the Sword Sovereign's ruins had spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. The name of the Sword Demon had completely spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. Of course, Yiguchin's arrogance also spread along with the name of the Sword Demon. Is there a need to cheer for someone who has only been in Sacred Cliff College for 3 months? At this moment, a slightly discordant voice sounded. The cheers all around quieted down. It was obvious that this person was not an ordinary person. Yiguchin raised his eyebrows slightly. What this meant was that after 3 months, Yiguchin would not be able to pass Mount Saint Crossing and would be transferred to Tensei College. Yiguchin looked over and saw that it was a young man in a purple shirt with an extraordinary bearing. There was a golden badge pinned to his chest. A disciple with a golden badge, Yiguchin muttered. He is the prodigy of the Jiang family, Jiang Yan. He is ranked 17th on the sword ranking, Mu Xingzi said. The Jiang family? The first person Yiguchin thought of was Jiang Fengyan. It seemed that this Jiang Yan was related to Jiang Fengyan. Jiang Yan first glanced at Yiguchin, then turned to Mu Xingzi with a faint smile on his face. Welcome to Sacred Cliff College, Miss Mu. Humph. Mu Xingzi did not respond. Miss Mu, it is not good to have an arrogant and ignorant person as your master, Jiang Yan said. As a member of the Jiang family, Jiang Yan naturally sided with Jiang Fengyan. Everyone knew that Jiang Fengyan was pursuing Mu Xingzi. Therefore, Jiang Yan did not like Yiguchin. Enough, stop talking, Bei Xian Elder said. Apart from the Holy Emblem disciples, the Gold Emblem disciples had the highest status. Even as an elder, he could not order Jiang Yan around. Not to mention that Jiang Yan had the backing of the Jiang family. Okay, I will stop talking. Anyway, we will see in 3 months, Jiang Yan said with a faint smile. Right at this moment, another beautiful figure appeared. It was a woman in a long black dress. She was tall and slender, and her black hair was tied up, revealing her slender neck. She also had a gold emblem on her chest, which represented her identity as a gold emblem disciple. Although her face was not extremely beautiful, it was delicate and embellished with a hint of coldness. Seeing this woman, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples automatically parted. The woman in the black dress walked to Ye Guqin without hesitation. Ye Guqin raised his eyebrows. Was she targeting him again? Duguwubai, is it? The woman in the black dress asked coldly. That's right, Ye Guqin said. You are too selfish, the woman in the black dress said. What do you mean? Even with Ye Guqin's personality, he was amused. He thought that this woman was also a heavenly talent and might be targeting him. However, he did not expect that this woman would say that he was selfish. You have extraordinary talent. If you grow up in the future, you will be a great help to Sacred Cliff College. However, you are arrogant and ignorant. In 3 months, you will challenge the Saint Crossing Mountain. If you fail, you will transfer to Tensei College. Since you chose the Divine Cliff Academy, you shouldered the responsibility of being a disciple of the Divine Cliff Academy. However, for your own selfish reasons, you let yourself fall into a gamble that you were sure to lose, causing my Divine Cliff Academy to lose a genius disciple. Tell me, if this isn't selfish, then what is? The woman in the black dress questioned him repeatedly. Ye Guqin was speechless. This woman in the black dress was quite eloquent. Ye Guqin did nothing wrong, but the woman made it sound as if he was extremely selfish. As the woman's voice faded, the spectating disciples of the Divine Cliff Academy also quieted down. He looked at Ye Guqin with a doubtful look in his eyes. No one doubted Ye Guqin's strength. After all, he defeated Hua Xingjie and the others. However, it was indeed a little ignorant to say that he could challenge the Saint Crossing Mountain. That's enough, Ling Moyin. Bei Xian Elder also had a headache. Mu Xingzu couldn't stand it anymore. She stood up and shouted, "What is this? Is this moral blackmail? Master should make the choice himself." Moreover, with Master's talent and strength, other colleges would be fighting to recruit Master even if he didn't choose Tensei College. Why must Master come to Sacred Cliff College? Ye Guqin might not care about Ling Moyin's questioning. However, Mu Xingzu couldn't stand Ling Moyin slandering Ye Guqin. You. Ling Moyin was at a loss for words. Indeed, with Ye Guqin's talent, he chose Sacred Cliff College because he thought highly of Sacred Cliff College. Master, since Sacred Cliff College doesn't welcome you, why don't you go to Tianxian College with Xingzhu? I'm sure Dean Wu Hongyan will also welcome you. Mu Xingzu held Ye Guqin's hand and was about to leave. Hey, my lady, don't go. Bei Xian Elder saw this and hurriedly stopped her. Ye Guqin was the winner of the 5 Academy selection. If he was tricked into Tianxian College, it would be a big loss. Although it was very likely that Ye Guqin wouldn't be able to stay in Sacred Cliff College after 3 months. But what if? Bei Xian Elder couldn't bear this torment. Chapter 921. Shut up, all of you. If anyone dares to spout nonsense again, don't blame me for being merciless. Bei Xian Elder scolded Ling Moyin, Jiang Yan, and the others. Then, he turned to face Ye Guqin and said, "Dugu, my young friend, please don't take offense. Sacred Cliff College welcomes you with open arms." From beginning to end, Ye Guqin's expression was extremely calm. He was not angered by Jiang Yan, Ling Moyin, and the others' provocation. "Of course, I don't mind," Ye Guqin said casually. To be honest, the 5 major colleges did not make much of a difference to him. Ye Guqin did not need to be taught. He only needed resources and a place to grow. It was the same everywhere. However, The sword monk Xuanlian, who ranked 4th on the sword ranking list, was also in Sacred Cliff College. Yiguchin did not forget to ask him some questions. Alright, all the new students can rest for 3 days. 3 days later, the admission ceremony will be held and you will be ranked, Bei Xian elder said. Yiguchin's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had climbed to the top of the mountain. If there were no accidents, he would definitely become a Silver Emblem disciple. Moreover, he had pulled out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword. It was not impossible for him to become a Gold Emblem disciple. Disciples of different ranks would receive different amounts of resources. Yiguchin was currently in a state of poverty. This was the time when he needed resources. Humph. Ling Moyin snorted coldly. Her beautiful eyes glanced coldly at Yiguchin before she left. See you in 3 days. Jiang Yen smiled faintly and also left. He had heard that Sacred Cliff College would not give Yiguchin any special treatment. In other words, Jiang Yen expected Yiguchin to become a Silver Emblem disciple at most. As for becoming a Gold Emblem disciple, it was not that simple. Su Fan, take our young friend Dugu and the others to a temporary place to stay and wait for the admission ceremony in 3 days, Bei Xian elder said. Yes, everyone. Please follow me. There was a silver badge pinned on his chest. Clearly, he was a Silver Emblem disciple. A Silver Emblem disciple's status in the academy was not low. After all, there were only a few Holy Emblem disciples and Gold Emblem disciples. Below them were the Silver Emblem disciples. With Yiguchin's talent and strength, it was certain that he would become a Silver Emblem disciple. Therefore, when facing Yiguchin and the others, Su Fan did not put on any airs. Seeing that Yiguchin and the others were led away, the rest of the Sacred Cliff College students also dispersed. However, they also wanted to know what kind of status Sacred Cliff College would give to the Sword Demon who caused a huge commotion in the Sword Supreme ruins. He should be a Silver Emblem disciple. After all, Dugu Wubai passed the peak of the Thunder Prison Mountain. I don't think so. He might be a Gold Emblem disciple. A Gold Emblem disciple? That's too fast, isn't it? What do you mean by fast? Who knows, he might become a Holy Emblem disciple in 3 months. Are you mocking the Sword Demon? On the other hand, Su Fan led Yiguchin and the others on a quiet path. He looked at Yiguchin and hesitated. In the end, he said, Brother Dugu, I hope you won't hold a grudge against senior sister Ling, oh? Yiguchin raised his eyebrows slightly. Why can't he? That woman is so mean. Can't he hate her? Mu Xingzu said with slight displeasure. Mu Xingzu would become very sensitive whenever something related to Yiguchin was involved. Sigh, actually, senior sister Ling is also a pitiful person. You must have heard of her brother. His name is Ling Mo Shu. Su Fan sighed. Ling Mo Shu, the former Holy Emblem disciple of Sacred Cliff College, ranked 10th on the sword leaderboard? Mu Xingzu said in surprise. Han Lingxian, Yen Chou Ku, and the others were also surprised. I'd like to hear the details, Yiguchin said. Then, Su Fan told Yiguchin some things. It turned out that Ling Moyin and Ling Mo Shu were a pair of siblings. Both of them were talented. Of course, Ling Mo Shu was stronger. Before the sword monk Xuanlian came to Sacred Cliff College, Ling Mo Shu was the strongest genius of Sacred Cliff College, ranked 10th on the sword leaderboard, a disciple of the Holy Emblem, and a Divine Palace expert. At that time, Ling Moyin's personality was completely different from now. Under the protection of Ling Mo Shu, she was innocent, gentle, and amiable. Then what happened later? Yiguchin was slightly interested. Every year, the 5 academies hold the 5 academies grand tournament. In one of the 5 academies grand tournament, senior brother Ling Mo Shu faced Hua Wuxiu. In the end, Su Fan sighed deeply. I know that. That Ling Mo Shu's right arm was forcibly severed by Hua Wuxiu. Furthermore, his divine palace was destroyed. Henceforth, he became a cripple, Mu Xingzhu said. That's right. After that, Senior brother Ling Mashu drank all day and was dispirited. As his sister, senior sister Ling was under a lot of pressure. She also cultivated madly and wanted to take revenge even in her dreams. She wanted to lead the Divine Cliff Academy and completely suppress the Heavenly Saint Academy. You can imagine how much pain senior sister Ling was in. After that, her personality changed drastically. She became cold and mean. Su Fan shook his head and sighed. I see. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. Even Mu Xingzu and the others did not say much. Ling Moyin's experience was indeed lamentable. Anyone who saw a loved one who used to protect them become a cripple and decadent person would suffer great pain. I hope Brother Dugu doesn't blame senior sister Ling, Su Fan said. Don't worry. I don't care. Yi Guqin smiled. Even if Su Fan did not say these words, Yi Guqin would not have cared. That's good. Su Fan smiled in relief. Ling Emoshu. If there's a chance, I'd like to meet him, Yi Guqin thought to himself. Since Ling Emoshu was ranked 10th on the sword list and a disciple of the Holy Emblem, his strength should be extraordinary. Yi Guqin was considering whether he could help Ling Emoshu get out of the abyss of decadence. After all, Yi Guqin and his master, Feng Manlu, had their cultivations destroyed. However, he had also walked out a path of martial arts that belonged to him. Yi Guqin believed that with his vision, he would definitely be able to enlighten Ling Emoshu. At that time, Ling Moyin would no longer target him. Then, Su Fan led Yi Guqin and the others to their temporary residence. You're only staying here temporarily. After the admission ceremony, you'll be assigned different cave residences, Su Fan said. Thank you. May I ask if the sword monk, Xuanlian, is in the academy? Yi Guqin asked. Yes, yes. Where is my senior brother? Kong Kong asked. Senior brother Xuanlian is out on a mission. After all, in our academy, we don't raise flowers in a greenhouse. All the disciples go out to experience life and death battles, Su Fan said. I see. Thank you, brother Su Fan. Yi Guqin cupped his fists. He was not in a hurry. Then, Su Fan briefly introduced the cultivation grounds of Sacred Cliff College to Yi Guqin. For example, the Sword Soul Cave, the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, the Elixir Pond in the Divine Abode, and so on were all good places to improve a martial artist's cultivation. Of course, the most mysterious cultivation ground of Sacred Cliff College is the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower. When Su Fan mentioned the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower, his tone became solemn. Seven-Sword Ancient Tower? Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He noticed from the corner of his eye that Mu Xingzu's expression changed slightly. Chapter 922. Brother Dugu, you should know that Sacred Cliff College was the first and oldest college in the Sword Dynasty. The Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda has existed since the founding of Sacred Cliff College. Su Fan smiled. It's that old? Yi Guqin was slightly surprised. Rumor has it that the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda has existed since the founding of the Sword Dynasty. Sacred Cliff College expanded outwards with the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda as the center, Su Fan said. How can I enter the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda? Yi Guqin was interested. It's not that easy to enter the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda. Only the disciples of the Holy Emblem are qualified to enter. However, in the past, the disciples of the Holy Emblem have only entered the outer pagoda. No one has ever entered the inner pagoda, Su Fan said. I see. What's so special about the Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda? Yi Guqin continued asking. The outer pagoda is rumored to contain many opportunities in the way of the sword. The disciples of the Holy Emblem who entered the outer pagoda all improved greatly without exception. As for the inner pagoda, even the disciples of the Holy Emblem could not enter, so no one knows what's inside, Su Fan said. I see. Thank you for your explanation. Yi Guqin smiled. He had not yet become a disciple of the Holy Emblem, so he did not need to think too much about it. After that, Su Fan left. Yiguchin and the others found a place to stay and waited for the admission ceremony in 3 days. In a quiet room, Yiguchin and Mu Xingzu were in the same room. Mu Xingzu had not had the chance to catch up with Yiguchin because of the previous incidents. She did not want to leave Yiguchin's side. Although Mu Xingzu had grown up on her own during this period of time, she was still Yiguchin's pillar. However, Yiguchin was still the pillar of support in her heart after all. At this moment, she was displaying the coquettish and dependent attitude of a young girl. Yiguchin roughly explained what had happened after Mu Xingzu left. Mu Xingzu listened with trepidation. It's great that the senior brothers and sisters of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest are still safe. Mu Xingzu heaved a sigh of relief. If nothing unexpected happens, we should meet again at the battlefield of Heaven's favorites, Yiguchin said with a faint smile. The people from the Sword Sect's Tower Forest were brought back to the Swallow Cloud dynasty by Yen Chang'e. In the future, they would meet again in the battlefield of prodigies. When senior sister Yen and the others see us, they will definitely be so surprised that they won't be able to close their mouths. Mu Xingzu said with a smile. Yen Wushuang. Yiguchin muttered with a slightly complicated expression. His heart was filled with guilt towards Su Jianshi and Situ Hongxue. He had indeed neglected the fact that there was a girl who was worried about him. Shaking his head slightly, Yiguchin got rid of the distracting thoughts. After all, they would meet again when the time came. At this moment, the blue crystal hanging around Mu Xingzu's neck suddenly flashed. A gentle, graceful, and beautiful figure appeared. She was wearing a blue robe that was translucent. Her features were picturesque and her skin was as white as snow. It was Ying Ning. Senior Ying Ning, long time no see. Yiguchin smiled faintly. Mu Xingzu was able to grow at such a fast speed and rise in the Sword Dynasty. Ying Ning's contribution was definitely not negligible. I didn't expect you to have such a complicated experience. Also, I feel a powerful soul pressure in your body. Ying Ning's eyes were deep as she looked at Yiguchin. An azure-robed figure also appeared behind Yiguchin. Interesting. You're not a tribulation saint yet, but you can condense an origin soul. The azure-robed figure was naturally Su Qingyu. He also looked at Ying Ning with some interest. A saint's origin soul. Ying Ning's eyes were filled with shock. Primordial spirits could only be condensed by heavenly tribulation saints. She had an origin soul because of her 8th grade talent, the immortal soul pearl. Although Su Qingyu's origin soul had no power left, it was still a saint's origin soul. Facing such an existence, Ying Ning also felt a great pressure. Fortunately, Su Qingyu did not have any pressure or killing intent towards Ying Ning. Otherwise, Ying Ning's origin soul might collapse. After Yiguchin's explanation, Mu Xingzu and Ying Ning also learned about Su Qingyu. They both let down their guard. Yiguchin, you need to enter the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower, Ying Ning suddenly said. Oh, senior, you mean? Yiguchin paused. The Seven-Sword Ancient Tower might have some connection to Sky Mountain, Ying Ning said solemnly. Is the Sword Dynasty also related to Sky Mountain? Yiguchin was slightly surprised. Yiguchin knew that Ying Ning had been searching for traces of Sky Mountain. Because her former lover was related to Sky Mountain. Moreover, Yiguchin believed that he and his father were also inextricably linked to Sky Mountain. One mountain, one sea, and one immortal valley. What kind of existences are the 3 hidden forces? How am I related to Sky Mountain? Yiguchin murmured to himself. He always felt that the 3 hidden forces were not that simple. Also, how was the sword sect of the Nantian region related to the 3 hidden forces? Who was the mysterious hand that grabbed the Celestial Emperor sword in the Tianhuang Plains? Was it Little Fatty's mysterious master, Xing Tianyi, or Yi Tianqing? And why did the 9 immemorial swords that hung in the sky of the 9 regions exist? Yiguchin felt that the entire Nantian region, and even the 9 regions, hid a huge secret. Of course, with Yiguchin's current strength, he could not find out too much. His only goal now was to become stronger and participate in the battlefield of prodigies. In the future, he would destroy the Divine Sword Sect, Starry Sword Pavilion, and other forces. I know. If I have the chance to enter the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower, I will definitely find out, Yiguchin said. He could not think too much now. He could only take one step at a time. Then, Mu Xingzu left reluctantly. She knew that Yiguchin still had to cultivate. Only Yiguchin was left in the room. It's time to completely control the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Even if it was only 2 or 3 days, Yiguchin did not waste any time. He took out the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Suddenly, there seemed to be a slight explosion in the void. This sword is not bad, Su Qingyu said lightly. Maybe it can be repaired, but it's too difficult to repair a Tribulation Divine weapon. Yiguchin shook his head slightly. Although he had inherited the legacy of Forged Sky Edge, it was still too difficult for him to repair the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yiguchin then began to completely blood bond with the Quasi-Tribulation Divine weapon. He dripped a drop of blood essence into the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison and began to refine it. Vaguely, Yiguchin seemed to hear 9 dragon roars. The 9-headed dragon demon's soul was hidden in the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Not only that, but a ball of 7-colored lightning shot out from the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison and entered Yiguchin's body. 7-colored profound lightning. Yiguchin's eyes narrowed. 7-colored profound lightning was the fusion of 7 different types of lightning. It was extremely powerful. Even among profound lightning, it was the most powerful and explosive type of lightning. As soon as the 7-colored profound lightning entered Yiguchin's body, Yiguchin immediately began to refine it. If it was an ordinary person, the 7-colored profound lightning would have shattered his body as soon as it entered his body. However, Yiguchin's body was too strong. He immediately used his ancient god body and began to refine the 7-colored profound lightning. At this time, the 7-colored profound lightning caught the purple lightning, ghastly lightning and void-level profound lightning and wrapped them in it. It began to devour and refine them. Could it be that he is about to evolve? Yiguchin was also surprised. Chapter 923. The heavenly fire and heavenly thunder were magical powers nurtured by heaven and earth. When they collided with each other, unless their powers were equal, the only outcome was to be merged, devoured, and refined. Just like how the heart demon flame had devoured the heavenly sun Xianming fire. The 7-colored dark thunder had also started to merge with the purple lightning ghastly thunder and the extreme void dark thunder. Yiguchin's body surface was filled with various colors of lightning, supporting Yiguchin as if he was the Lord of Thunder. His body was once again tempered by the thunder. Yiguchin, you can take this opportunity to get a preliminary understanding of the lightning sword principle left in this sword, Su Qingyu reminded him. Indeed, the heavenly thunder is merging in my body. I can comprehend the lightning sword essence in the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison at the same time. Yiguchin's eyes lit up. The merging of the heavenly thunder would help Yiguchin comprehend the essence of the thunder. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes, and started to comprehend. Countless lightning flashed in the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword, and the lightning seemed to condense into countless mysterious and profound thunder ancient characters. That was the lightning sword principle that the previous owner of the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, Lightning Sword Reverend, had comprehended. Yiguchin immersed his mind and started to comprehend the lightning sword principle. Of course, the lightning sword principle was a peerless sword principle and it was not easy to comprehend. Moreover, the lightning sword principle was considered to be one of the most powerful sword principles in terms of attacking power. In terms of overbearing destruction and destructive power, it was even more powerful than the Azura sword principle and lifeless sword principle. Yiguchin did not expect to comprehend it immediately. He only wanted to comprehend it at the beginning. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The rolling thunder power in Yiguchin's body finally calmed down. Yiguchin carefully checked his body. He found that the purple lightning ghastly thunder and the extreme void dark thunder had been completely merged with the 7-colored dark thunder. The 7-colored dark thunder should be called the 9-colored dark thunder. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, silver. There were a total of 9 colors, which represented the fusion of 9 different types of lightning into one, and the fusion of them into the domineering 9-colored profound lightning. What a powerful heavenly lightning! It is much stronger than the purple void profound lightning formed by the fusion of 2 heavenly lightnings. Yiguchen was a little surprised. He slowly raised his hand, and the 9-colored profound bombs jumped and shot out from his fingertips. The 9-colored lightning continued to emit explosive sounds. Yiguchen could sense that the 9-colored profound bomb was far more powerful than the purple void profound bomb. Refining such exotic thunder will make it easier for you to comprehend the lightning sword principle, Su Qingyu said. Although it's helpful, it's not that simple. Yiguchen shook his head slightly. He had many sword daos to comprehend now. Although he had comprehended the Azura sword dao and edgeless sword dao, the 5 elemental sword intent was still some distance away from transforming into a sword dao. He had only begun to comprehend the lightning sword principle. It would take him a lot of time to reach the level of sword intent. Not to mention the creation level all creation sword dao. The all creation sword dao was even harder to comprehend than the Azura sword dao, the 5 elemental sword dao, and the lightning sword dao combined. As for the more profound selfless sword dao, Yiguchen judged that it was definitely beyond the creation level. He had reached a supreme level of existence. There should be many treasured places in Sacred Cliff College and the Sword Dynasty that can help you comprehend the sword dao, Su Qingyu said. Yiguchen nodded in agreement. That was indeed the case. The Sword Dynasty was a country of sword cultivators. How could there not be treasured places that specialized in comprehending the sword dao? The Sword Tomb, one of the 4 secret realms of the Sword Dynasty, was a place that specialized in comprehending the sword dao. In Sacred Cliff College, there were also places like the Sword Soul Cave where one could comprehend the sword dao. When I become a disciple, I'll go to the Sword Soul Cave and other treasured places to take a look, Yiguchen murmured. At this moment, Mu Xingzu's voice came from outside the door. The admission ceremony was about to begin. Yiguchen pushed the door open and walked out. Han Lingxian, Kong Kong, Yan Worried Guest, and the others were all there. As for Qin Paisai, Zuoqiu Qing, and the others, they had joined Tianxian College and did not follow Yiguchen. Please. Su Fan also came and led Yiguchen and the others to the place where the admission ceremony would be held. The venue was on a spirit mountain in the Divine Cliff Cave. Not long after, Yiguchen and the other newly admitted disciples were led by Su Fan to the top of the spirit mountain. Looking around, the entire spirit mountain seemed to have been flattened. At this moment, there was a huge crowd of people. They were all Sacred Cliff College disciples who came to watch the ceremony. Except for those disciples who are doing missions outside or cultivating, most of the rest are gathered here, Su Fan said with a smile. Yiguchen looked around. These Sacred Cliff College disciples were indeed not weak. They were all above the bridge of heaven and earth. Among them, Yiguchen saw Jiang Yan, who had targeted him that day. On the other side, Ling Moyin, who was wearing a long black dress and had a cold expression, was also there. She looked at Yiguchen with a cold gaze. Yiguchen did not care. He looked around again and suddenly saw a disciple with a golden emblem. The disciple with a golden emblem was dressed in white. He was tall and handsome. Standing among the disciples, he was like a crane in a flock of chickens. Who is that disciple with a golden emblem? Yiguchen asked Su Fan. That person is called Ouyang Tianji. He is ranked 13th on the sword ranking. He is from the Ouyang family. Su Fan's tone became cold. The Ouyang family? Yiguchen raised his eyebrows. The Sword Alliance has 5 pseudo-saint families. They are the Hua family, the Jiang family, the Yin family, the Shengguan family, and the Ouyang family. Although Ouyang Tianji is not the strongest genius of the Ouyang family, he is very strong, Su Fan said. Yiguchen nodded slightly. Seemingly sensing Yiguchen's gaze, Ouyang Tianji turned his face towards Yiguchen. He glanced at Yiguchen expressionlessly before withdrawing his gaze. From your tone, it seems that you have something against Ouyang Tianji? Yi Guqin asked Su Fan. He could hear the indifference in Su Fan's tone. Su Fan approached Yi Guqin and said in a low voice, "To tell the truth, Brother Dugu, Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji are both geniuses of the aristocratic families. I even suspect that they are spies planted in the academy by the aristocratic families." Yi Guqin nodded. It seemed that the 5 academies were also very complicated. In addition to these people, Yi Guqin also noticed some experts from Sacred Cliff College. Some of the elders who were at the same level as Bei Xian Elder were around the 3rd heaven of the Venerable Realm. There were also 5 figures sitting high in the air. Yi Guqin also knew about the 5 figures. They were the 5 temple masters of Sacred Cliff College. They were in charge of the Mission Hall, Sword Technique Hall, Elixir Hall, Divine Weapon Hall, and Punishment Hall. The cultivation of each temple master was around the 7th heaven of the Venerable Realm. In Sacred Cliff College, above the temple masters was Elder Ime, and above him was the mysterious dean of the Divine Cliff College. However, Yi Guqin did not see the dean of the Divine Cliff College and Elder Ime. "Everyone, the admission ceremony has begun. The disciples who join Sacred Cliff College will be divided into different levels according to the results of the test," Bei Xian Elder said as he stepped forward. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground on the top of Spirit Mountain suddenly lit up with an array. Then, under Yi Guqin's surprised gaze, the ground began to split from the middle. A majestic array appeared, accompanied by 36 puppets. Chapter 924. Is this an Earth Rank array? Yi Guqin glanced around and looked at the 36 puppets. Every single one of the puppets seemed to be made of metal, and they gave off a sense of toughness. The puppets held sharp swords in their hands. At the same time, the 36 puppets were compatible with the array on the ground. They were obviously part of the Earth Rank array. However, in Yi Guqin's opinion, this array could barely be considered an Earth Rank array. Its power was probably weaker than his 5 Emperors Cosmos Sword Array, let alone the 6 Dao Ashura Sword Array. This is the Tiangang Sword Puppet Array. Although it's only close to an Earth Rank array, it's enough to pose a threat to those in the Divine Dwelling stage. The content of this assessment is to break through the Tiangang Sword Puppet Array. Those who can last 15 minutes in the array will be Bronze Emblem Disciples. Those who can last for 2 hours will become Silver Emblem Disciples. Those who can last for more than 4 hours or even barely resist the array will become Gold Emblem Disciples. Bei Xian Elder announced the rules. "So I have to break through the Tiangang Sword Puppet Array?" Yi Guqin mumbled. "Brother Dugu, of course you don't have to. With your talent and strength, you'll undoubtedly become a Silver Emblem Disciple. It's not impossible for you to become a Gold Emblem Disciple," Su Fan said. Soon, the assessment began. The prodigies who had joined Sacred Cliff College began to break through the Tiangang Sword Puppet Array. As soon as they stepped into the range of the array, the 36 sword puppets used the Tiangang sword movement technique and slashed at them together. Such a formation was more than enough to trap even the most ordinary Divine Dwelling experts. Not to mention the prodigies who had reached the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. None of the prodigies could achieve good results in the Tiangang sword puppet array. Ji Fan, Bronze Emblem Disciple, Zhou Yi, Bronze Emblem Disciple, Shen Qiu, Bronze Emblem Disciple, Bei Xian Elder read them one by one. His face did not look too good. The Divine Cliff Academy is really getting worse year by year. Jiang Yan muttered to himself in a low voice. As prodigies from aristocratic families, they had no sense of belonging to Sacred Cliff College. On the other hand, Ling Moyin's already cold face seemed to have been sealed in ice. The prodigies recruited by Sacred Cliff College had always been weaker than those recruited by the other 4 colleges. As time passed, no one was able to last more than 2 hours in the Heavenly Dipper Sword Talisman formation. And during this period of time, Yi Guqin was observing the Heavenly Dipper Sword Puppet Grand Array with rapt attention. As long as it was a formation, there would be rules to follow. Although Yi Guqin did not specialize in Array Dao, with the 5 Emperors Qiankuan Sword Array and the 6 Dao Azura Sword Array, he was no stranger to Array Dao. Furthermore, this was considered a sword array. For a sword cultivator like Yiguchen, understanding it was even easier. Next, Han Lingxian. Bei Xian Elder announced. Han Lingshuan's delicate body trembled slightly as she bit her lip. She knew her own limits. She knew that with her abilities, she could only be a bronze emblem disciple. Just as Han Lingxian was about to enter the array, Yiguchen's eyes flashed and he said, "Wait." Huh? Han Lingxian stopped in her tracks and looked at Yiguchen in confusion. Yiguchen moved closer to Han Lingshuan's ear. Han Lingxian did not know what to do. Her ears turned red and her sparkling earlobes turned pink. When Mu Xingzhu saw this scene, she was slightly surprised and pouted her lips. But she knew that Yiguchen would not do anything overboard. Bei Xian Elder, Su Fan, Ling Moyin, Jiang Yan, Ouyang Tianji, and the others were all stunned when they saw Yiguchen's actions. What is Duge Wubai doing? Why is he being intimate with a beauty at this time? Is he teaching her how to break through the array? With Yiguchen's current reputation, his every move would be scrutinized by everyone. Oh, what a joke. Does he really think that he can help her pass by just giving her some pointers? Jiang Yan was dismissive. Although the Tiangang sword talisman array was not comparable to a true earth-level array, it was not far off. Even a divine dwelling realm expert would find it difficult to break through, let alone Yiguchen. It's futile. Ouyang Tianji also shook his head. Ling Moyin looked deeply at Yiguchen. She also wanted to know how capable this rising sword demon was. If you do this, you should be able to last until the end, Yiguchen said. I see. Han Lingxian was still in a daze. It was because Yiguchen had given her some pointers. Han Lingxian immediately had a deeper understanding of the Tiangang sword talisman array. Without any hesitation, she immediately stepped into the array. The 36 sword talisman puppets immediately surrounded her and tried to kill her. The sword talisman array contained the positions of the 36 stars of the Tiangang sword talisman array, as if it was the orbit of the stars in the sky. Han Lingxian was among them, and she was as agile as a fish in the water. She wasn't trying to break the formation because it was simply impossible for her to do so with her current strength. Han Lingxian only wanted to persevere for 2 hours and become a silver emblem disciple. Did the sword demon, Duge Wubai, really give her pointers? That's impossible. It's the sword demon's first time here. He shouldn't have come into contact with the Tiangang Jinkui array. Han Lingxian, who was only at the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth spiritual bridge, had persevered in the array for so long. The entire peak of Spirit Mountain was in an uproar. Bei Xian Elder was also in a daze. He could not help but look at Yiguchen. He also did not dare to believe that Yiguchen could see through the Tiangang sword talisman array's trajectory in such a short time and give her pointers. However, Han Lingshuan's performance was an ironclad fact. There must be something fishy. Jiang Yan did not believe it at all. Even if Jiang Fengmian was here, he would not be able to see through the Tiangang sword talisman array in such a short time. Under the watchful eyes of many Sacred Cliff College disciples, elders, and temple masters. 2 hours passed quietly. Han Lingxian moved back and forth in the sword array. She was already exhausted. Her true qi was depleted, and she was drenched in sweat. With a loud clang, a sword talisman puppet suddenly swung its sword. Han Lingxian could no longer resist and was directly thrown out of the sword array. Han Lingxian, a silver emblem disciple. Bei Xian Elder was stunned for a moment before he shouted. No matter what, Han Lingxian had persevered in the array for so long. They could not say that she had cheated. As soon as he said that, a commotion broke out. Han Lingxian looked at Yiguchen excitedly. There was a big difference between the treatment of a silver emblem disciple and a bronze emblem disciple. Next, there were only 3 people who had not taken the test. Yiguchen, Kong Kong, and Yan Chou Ku. Kong Kong, Yan Chou Ku, both of you reached the upper level of the Thunder Prison Mountain. Therefore, you don't need to go through the Tiangang sword talisman array. you can directly become a Silver Emblem disciple. As for Yiguchin, due to your excellent performance in the selection of the 5 academies, 3 brilliant lights, and the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison, you also defeated Hua Xingjie and the others. Therefore, you can directly become a Gold Emblem disciple. Bei Xian Elder said loudly. He's a Gold Emblem disciple. Elder Bei Xian's words caused another uproar among the crowd. Chapter 925. The disciples of the 5 major colleges were divided into Bronze Emblem, Silver Emblem, Gold Emblem, and Holy Emblem. Needless to say, there were only a handful of Holy Emblem disciples in the 5 major colleges and the entire Sword Dynasty. One had to pass the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing in order to obtain the title. Below the Holy Emblem disciples, the Gold Emblem disciples had the highest status. Generally speaking, any new disciple who joined the 5 major colleges would start as a Bronze Emblem disciple. For example, Han Lingxian, Kong Kong, and the others who could directly become Silver Emblem disciples were rare and enviable. As for directly becoming a Gold Emblem disciple, it was even rarer in the past. The last person from Sacred Cliff College to receive this treatment was the Sword Monk Xuanlian. Now, the Sword Monk Xuanlian was also a Holy Emblem disciple. But what was the Sword Monk Xuanlian's level? He was ranked 4th on the sword ranking and was a Divine Dwelling Realm elite. Yiguchin's performance throughout his journey had been astonishing. But his current cultivation level was only at the 4th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Even though his combat strength was extraordinary, some of the Gold Emblem disciples of Sacred Cliff College felt that it was unfair. Elder, I think we need to discuss this matter further. If it's so easy to become a Gold Emblem disciple, where do you think we are? Jiang Yan stepped forward and was the first to object. I also think it's inappropriate, Elder. Ouyang Tianji also stood up to object. Elder, we don't know Dugu Wubai's true strength. It's indeed inappropriate to let him become a Gold Emblem disciple, Ling Moyin said after a slight hesitation. Seeing that the 3 Gold Emblem disciples objected, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples looked at each other. It was rare to see such a situation. Dugu Wubai's performance is enough for him to become a Gold Emblem disciple. This is the college's arrangement. Are you going to object? Bei Xian Elder's face darkened slightly. It was normal for Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji to object. After all, they were prodigies of aristocratic families and were loyal to their families. It was normal for them to object to Yiguchin. However, Ling Moyin was a true disciple of Sacred Cliff College. How could she object to Yiguchin? However, Elder Bei Xian also knew about Ling Moyin's experience, so he just sighed in his heart. Bei Xian, Ouyang Tianji said to say, he said to say, Dugu Wubai, he said. Ouyang Tianji smiled. Ouyang Tianji. Ouyang, and, Dugu Wubai is. Is it fair for Gold Emblem disciples like us? He did not object to Yiguchin as openly as Jiang Yan, but it was even more unbearable. This is not special treatment. This is what Dugu Wubai deserves, Bei Xian Elder said loudly. Okay, if that's the case, we won't say anything. Ouyang Tianji did not mind and took a step back. Although the hubbub had been suppressed, there were still many whispers. Some people looked at Yiguchin, Kong Kong, and the others with doubts. After all, Yiguchin and the others did not need to break through the array to obtain noble status. This Ouyang Tianji is not simple. Yiguchin looked at Ouyang Tianji. At this moment, he took a step back in order to advance. He did not argue with Yiguchin. Instead, it made the Sacred Cliff College disciples question him even more. For the time being, Yiguchin did not know how strong Ouyang Tianji was. However, he was indeed very shrewd. Okay, then next. Bei Xian Elder did not want to delay. At this moment, Yiguchin said, Bei Xian Elder, if that's the case, I would like to try the Big Dipper sword puppet formation. As soon as Yiguchin finished speaking, the commotion in the surroundings fell silent for a moment. Many of the Divine Cliff Academy's disciples also looked at Yiguchin in surprise. Clearly, they were somewhat surprised. Ouyang Tianji's lips suddenly curled up. He thought to himself, he took the bait. Young Dugu, you don't have to do this. Bei Xian elder wanted to say something, but stopped. Yiguchen's strength was indeed not weak in his eyes. However, if he wanted to challenge the Big Dipper sword puppet formation, he could only obtain the identity of a silver emblem disciple at most. As for resisting or even breaking the formation, Bei Xian elder did not even think about it. Even a divine dwelling stage holy emblem disciple like Xuanlian would not be able to break the formation in a short period of time. As for Yiguchen's previous guidance to Han Lingxian, it only allowed Han Lingxian to last a little longer in the formation. It was still far from breaking the formation. Yiguchen could only obtain the result of a silver emblem disciple at most. That would be even more unconvincing. It's just a Big Dipper sword puppet formation, Yiguchen said with a faint smile. After he had completely refined the 9-dragon thunder prison and obtained the 9-colored profound bomb, his strength had soared again. The Big Dipper Jiankue formation might not be able to stop him. Humph, shameless boasting. Jiang Yan snorted coldly. Ling Moyin looked at Yiguchen with a cold gaze. Yiguchen's arrogance made her feel very disgusted. Dugu Wubai, your talent is indeed outstanding, but your arrogant personality is a waste of your talent, Ling Moyin could not help but say. What right do you have to talk about my master? Mu Xingzu once again turned into a protective demon. Since Brother Dugu wants to challenge the formation, then I will also give it a try, Yan Cho said. I want to go too. Kong Kong echoed. You guys, sigh, just do your best. Bei Xian elder could not stop them. Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji looked at Yiguchen and the others as if they were watching a show. The densely packed academy disciples in the surroundings were also unable to take their eyes off him. Yan Cho was the first to enter the formation. As a prodigy on the sword roll, Yan Chao's strength was indeed extraordinary. His ethereal movement technique, coupled with the Misty Rain illusory sword, allowed him to last for a while in the formation. In the end, Yan Cho lasted for 3 hours and was still a silver emblem disciple. No one objected to this. Yan Cho deserved to be a silver emblem disciple. However, Yan Cho himself did not seem to be satisfied. Kong Kong then made his move. Looking at Kong Kong, who had a strong head and a chubby face and was still a child, the surrounding disciples were speechless. This little monk looks like he's only 11 or 12 years old, but he's already at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. This little guy is the real genius. Some of the Sacred Cliff College disciples looked at Kong Kong with kindness. Some of the female disciples even wanted to pinch Kong Kong's chubby cheeks. As Yiguchen's reputation as the sword demon was too well known, Kong Kong did not receive much attention. However, Kong Kong now stood out and had such a cultivation level at such a young age. It was shocking. I heard that Kong Kong seems to be related to Senior Xuanlian, some people whispered. Yiguchen also gave Kong Kong some pointers. Kong Kong then entered the formation. What can this little kid do? Jiang Yan shook his head. It was obviously difficult for someone at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge to last more than 2 hours in the formation. However, to everyone's surprise, Kong Kong was like a little golden Buddha in the formation. His entire body emitted a golden glow. His strength was not much weaker than those 9th stage prodigies. With Yiguchen's pointers, Kong Kong managed to last more than 4 hours in the formation. In other words, Kong Kong could become a gold emblem disciple. His performance shocked everyone. How come Dugu Wubai is surrounded by such monsters? Some of the disciples were dumbfounded by what they saw. Even the 5 temple masters were slightly tempted. They were prepared to take Kong Kong as their disciple in the future. However, what followed next was the real highlight of the show. The gazes of countless Divine Cliff Academy's disciples and elders fell upon Yiguchen. The 5 temple masters also looked at Yiguchen. Could this rising sword demon last more than 2 hours in the Big Dipper sword puppet formation and become a gold emblem disciple? Chapter 926. Many people looked at Yi Guchen curiously. Yi Guchen's performance was even worse than Kong Kong's. The title of Sword Demon was undoubtedly a joke. Young Master Dugu, be careful. Han Lingxian exhorted. Only those who had personally entered the Big Dipper sword puppet formation knew how difficult it was to break through. Don't worry. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. He had been watching from the sidelines for so long. Even if he did not completely comprehend the formation, he had at least grasped most of it. At the very least, Yi Guchen still had Su Qingyu, the great god, with him. As a heavenly tribulation saint, Su Qingyu could break through the Big Dipper sword puppet formation with just a glance. Of course, Yi Guchen did not ask Su Qingyu before. He had comprehended it on his own. Just as Yi Guchen was about to step into the formation. Suddenly, Ouyang Tianji opened his mouth and said, "Hold on." Yi Guchen stopped in his tracks. His eyes were deep as he said faintly, "What can I do for you?" Jiang Yan and the others also looked at Ouyang Tianji with slight confusion. They did not understand why Ouyang Tianji stopped Yi Guchen. "Ha, since you want to break through the formation, there's no lack of a wager. I don't have anything precious on me. Let's bet with this." Ouyang Tianji's eyes flashed. He turned his wrist and took out a jade bottle. When he opened the jade bottle, a strong surge of spiritual energy gushed out. A jade elixir rose from the jade bottle and floated in the air. This is, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples could feel the medicinal power of the elixir. They could not help but be shocked, and a touch of desire appeared in their eyes. A divine elixir. There was no doubt that the item that Ouyang Tianji said was not precious was a divine elixir. The value of a divine elixir was not inferior to that of a divine elixir. It was even more precious than an ordinary divine elixir. This was because the divine elixir pills were refined from holy herbs and were even more precious. This Ouyang Tianji actually took out a saint elixir pill as the prize. That's right, the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill. This Ouyang Tianji is really going all out. In the sky, a purple-robed woman smiled. She was the hall master of the Pellet Hall, Dan Xia. "Ha, I'm afraid that Ouyang Tianji only has one of this kind of medicinal pill. Instead of using it himself, he's actually willing to use it as a wager. It seems that his scheme isn't small." Another black-robed middle-aged man with a temperament as sharp as a sword shook his head. He was the Sword Technique Palace leader, Luo Feng. "That's a Yuan spirit breakthrough pill. A single pill can increase one's chances of breaking through to the divine dwelling stage by 40%. The surrounding disciples' eyes were filled with longing. As a sacred pill, the Yuan spirit breakthrough pill only had one effect, which was to increase the chances of breaking through to the divine dwelling stage by 40%. Don't think that 40% is nothing. If a 9th-level Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge prodigy had a 50% chance of successfully breaking through to the divine dwelling stage, then after taking the Yuan Spirit Breakthrough Pill, he would have a 90% chance of breaking through. The Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge to the divine dwelling stage was a major hurdle in the cultivation realm, and it was very difficult to break through. One could imagine how precious the Yuan Spirit Breakthrough Pill was. Even Jiang Yan and the other 9th-level Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge prodigies had blazing eyes. Even with the foundation of a false saint family, they couldn't take out much of such a pill. In fact, Ouyang Tianji only had one on him. He originally planned to use it to break through to the divine dwelling stage, but after seeing Yi Guchen, he changed his mind. Yuan Spirit Breakthrough Pill. Yi Guchen murmured in his heart. He also knew how precious this sacred pill was, and it had a fatal attraction to Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge prodigies. "It's not a small sum, but unfortunately, I don't have anything precious on me." Yi Guchen smiled faintly. He was telling the truth. Now Yi Guchen couldn't be said to be poor, but he wasn't far from it. It was impossible for Yi Guchen to take out the enlightenment tree as a bet. "Oh, Brother Dugu must be joking. Didn't you just get a treasure?" Ouyang Tianji smiled faintly. "Oh." Yi Guchen's eyes dimmed. Ouyang Tianji's purpose was finally exposed. What he wanted was the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. He wants to bet the 9-dragon thunder prison sword, tisk. Interesting. How can Dugu Wubai take out the 9-dragon thunder prison sword? His chances of winning this bet are not high. Hearing Ouyang Tianji's words, the surrounding disciples whispered to each other. Gongzi Dugu, don't be fooled. Han Lingxian urged. This was obviously a trap for Yi Guqin. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Ouyang Tianji wanted Yi Guqin's 9-dragon thunder prison sword. Mu Xingzu didn't try to persuade Yi Guqin. She knew that Yi Guqin had his own judgment. He actually has such an idea. Jiang Yan's expression was slightly serious. To be honest, he also coveted the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. After all, it used to be a heavenly tribulation sword. Even if it was damaged now, it was still a top quasi-heavenly tribulation sword. Little friend Dugu, don't be impulsive. Bei Xian elder said solemnly. Yi Guqin smiled faintly and shook his head. Seeing Yi Guqin's action, the surrounding disciples booed. Although they knew that Yi Guqin wasn't stupid and would definitely refuse, his attitude was a bit of a coward after all, which was a shame to the name of Sword Demon. Ouyang Tianji's eyes showed a trace of disappointment. He's not stupid. Ling Moyin said lightly. Yi Guqin's lips curled into a faint smile. This Ouyang Tianji was indeed not weak. He reminded him of his former enemy, Zhou Tong. Ouyang Tianji set up a trap, and Yi Guqin fell into it. He would naturally get his wish and obtain the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. If Yi Guqin refused, it would also suppress the reputation of Sword Demon and cause Yi Guqin's reputation in Sacred Cliff College to drop. No matter what choice he made, it would be disadvantageous to Yi Guqin. But unfortunately, Ouyang Tianji miscalculated one thing. Yi Guqin's strength was far beyond his imagination. Ouyang Tianji, although this elemental spirit barrier breaking pill is precious, it's a bit of a stretch to exchange for a quasi-heavenly tribulation sword. What's more, the 9-dragon thunder prison sword was once a real heavenly tribulation sword. Yi Guqin said with a faint smile. Since Ouyang Tianji wanted to scheme against him, Yi Guqin didn't mind collecting more interest. Oh, if you want to bet, I'll take out 10 quasi-holy herbs and 10 quasi-holy pills. Ouyang Tianji's eyes flashed with hidden joy. He thought that Yi Guqin had finally taken the bait. Okay, it's a deal. If I, Dugu Wubai, can't break this array, the 9-dragon thunder prison sword will belong to you. Yi Guqin said casually. Dugu Wubai, what we want is fairness, not some wager. Take back the wager, said Dugu Wubai. Ling Moyin said. She just hated Yi Guqin's arrogance and expected better from him. She didn't really want to trick Yi Guqin. No need. Yi Guqin waved his hand. Why are you like this? I already said it's a bet you'll lose. You still want to bet? Are you stupid? Ling Moyin reprimanded coldly, looking a bit embarrassed. She had already reminded him in such a way, but Yi Guqin was still so stubborn. How could the Big Dipper sword puppet array be broken by a 4th stage heaven and earth spiritual bridge cultivator? Looking at Ling Moyin's cold face, Yi Guqin suddenly realized that this woman wasn't bad. She had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She couldn't bear to see him lose the 9-dragon thunder prison. But unfortunately, neither Ling Moyin nor Ouyang Tianji could see through Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin didn't say anything more. Under everyone's gaze, he stepped into the array. Chapter 927. The moment Yi Guqin stepped into the great array, the Tiangang sword puppet formation immediately began to operate. 36 sword puppets, in accordance with the trajectory of the Tiangang 36 stars, surrounded Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He did not directly bring out the 9-dragon thunder prison, but made a grabbing motion in the air and condensed his chi into a sword. He wanted to test it first. Clang! Yi Guqin's sword swept out, striking the sword puppet but was unable to push it back. What powerful puppets! The strength of each sword puppet is not weaker than the 9th level spirit bridge of heaven and earth. In addition, They are as hard as iron and have unparalleled strength. They are stronger than ordinary 9th-level spirit bridge of heaven and earth. If they are supported by the power of the formation, they can indeed encircle the divine dwelling stage and pose a great threat. After a short contact, Yiguchen instantly measured the power of the Tiangang sword puppet formation. Why didn't Duga Wubai bring out the 9-dragon thunder prison? I'm afraid he hasn't completely refined it. After all, such a powerful divine weapon is not easy to control. Seeing that Yiguchen had condensed his chi into a sword, many Sacred Cliff College disciples began to discuss spiritedly. Oh, as I expected, it is absolutely impossible for you to completely control the 9-dragon thunder prison in just 3 days. Without the 9-dragon thunder prison, your strength will be greatly reduced. Ouyang Tianji revealed a confident smile. If that's the case, then there should be no suspense. Jiang Yan also shook his head. I've already warned him, but he's still like this. Ling Moyin scrunched her brows. She increasingly felt that Yiguchen's character made her dislike him. In Ling Moyin's eyes, no matter how talented and strong a person was, if his character was so ignorant and arrogant, his future achievements would be very limited. Obviously, in her eyes, Yiguchen was such an existence. Many Sacred Cliff College disciples looked at Yiguchen with more and more suspicion. After all, the name of Sword Demon was too well known, and he had created many miracles in the selection of the 5 academies. If Yiguchen's performance was not up to expectations, it would naturally cause people to feel disappointed. Sigh. Bei Xian elder sighed deeply. Han Lingxian was also worried for Yiguchen. Only Mu Xingzu and Kong Kong remained calm. They trusted Yiguchen very much. Is this all the Sword Demon has? In the sky, some of the palace masters were surprised. Let's keep watching. Is he really that simple? Sword Technique Palace leader Luo Feng said lightly. As time passed, in the eyes of outsiders, Yiguchen seemed to have fallen into a dangerous situation and was being completely suppressed by the sword puppet. Are you all waiting to see me make a fool of myself? Yiguchen could feel the gazes from all around him. However, what they did not know was that Yiguchen was not simply being suppressed. He was trying to figure out the Big Dipper blade puppet formation. Do you need help? Su Qingyu's voice sounded in Yiguchen's mind. Su Qingyu's one sentence was enough to break the formation. Ha! It's just a formation. I don't need Senior Su's help. Yiguchen laughed in his heart. At this time, the surrounding sword puppets had already surrounded Yiguchen. 6 sword puppets held their swords and slashed down at the same time. The strong sword wind swept over. Most importantly, it had completely sealed off Yiguchen's surroundings, making it difficult for him to escape. Is it over? The surrounding people focused their gazes. The longer the battle dragged on, the more powerful the Big Dipper blade puppet formation became. And now, the power of the formation had reached its peak. The 6 swords attacked Yiguchen together. At this critical moment, Yiguchen's figure suddenly became blurry, like a flower in the mirror or the moon in the water. Wave-like subtle steps was executed. If so close, yet worlds apart was extremely fast. Then wave-like subtle steps was a wonderful and strange movement technique. Yiguchen's figure became blurry in an instant, and he actually flashed out of the encirclement of the 6 sword puppets. What kind of movement technique is that? Some Sacred Cliff College disciples were stunned. Yiguchen's figure flashed out of the gap between the swords. They had never seen such a movement technique before. But what was really shocking was not just that. Yiguchen's eyes flashed with lightning. With a flip of his wrist, there was a thunderous explosion as well as 9 dragon roars. A divine weapon that shone with peerless sharpness appeared in the world, flickering with lightning. It was the 9-dragon thunder prison. That Duga Wubai has summoned the 9-dragon thunder prison. Could it be that he? Seeing Yiguchen summon the 9-dragon thunder prison, even some elders were shocked. A quasi-tribulation divine weapon was not something that could be completely controlled in a short period of time. Yiguchin swung his sword, and the blazing sword light turned into waves of lightning ripples, and crashed into the 6 sword puppets. Boom! In the violent and ear-piercing explosion, the 6 sword puppets were directly blown back. Not only that, but their chests, which were as hard as metal, also had pitch-black lightning burn marks on them. Yiguchin's sword had blown back 6 sword puppets at the 9th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. This scene silenced everyone in the surroundings. Those questioning gazes were almost frozen at this moment. Ouyang Tianji's face changed for the first time. He faintly felt that he seemed to have missed something. How could it be? You have completely refined the 9-dragon thunder prison, and can fully display its power? Jiang Yan exclaimed in disbelief. The 9-dragon thunder prison was extremely powerful, and could not be refined in a short period of time. But how could they know that Yiguchin had the god-devouring demon sword and the thunder calamity sword, which were even more powerful than the 9-dragon thunder prison? It's just a quasi-tribulation divine weapon. Yiguchin's lips curved into a cold smile. He could release such power without using any sword moves, and it was all because of the power of the 9-dragon thunder prison. But in this short 3-day seclusion, Yiguchin's harvest was not only the 9-dragon thunder prison. Whoosh! On the other side, the rest of the sword puppets also surrounded and attacked. Yiguchin raised his hand, and a terrifying 9-colored lightning appeared. It suddenly burst out, turning into a blazing lightning tide, and swept towards the sword puppets. That's the 7-colored profound bomb. No, it feels even more powerful. Bei Xian Elder's eyes narrowed. Many people knew that there was an extremely explosive 7-colored profound bomb in the 9-dragon thunder prison. But they did not expect that Yiguchin had also refined the 7-colored profound bomb, and it seemed to be even more powerful. Rumble! Thunder roared, and lightning flashed. Yiguchin was like the king of thunder. With the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand, he swept in all directions. Thunder Dragon Purgatory. Yiguchin shook the 9-dragon thunder prison sword, and a thunder flood dragon demon's soul rushed out, turning into a lightning prison, and trapped more than 10 sword puppets. He immediately attacked the other sword puppets. As long as the trajectory of the Celestial Dipper was destroyed, the Celestial Dipper's sword puppet formation would be easy to break. 3 Ultimate Holy Swords, Star Breaker Sword. Yiguchin turned the tip of his sword, and the power of thunder and lightning spread out, as if it was sweeping through the galaxy. However, Yiguchin did not stop there. Instead, he performed the second move. 3 Ultimate Holy Swords, Kun Moon Sword. Dual Swords Combine, Star and Moon Reversal. Yiguchin shouted coldly, and the Star Breaker Sword and Kun Moon Sword of the 3 Ultimate Holy Swords merged into one, turning into an even more powerful move. Star and Moon Reversal. Chapter 928. The power of the 3 Ultimates Holy Swords was not to be underestimated. At this moment, the combination of the Star-Shattering Sword and the Moon Sword was even more frightening. Even the faint trace of contempt in the eyes of Ouyang Tianji, Jiang Yan, and the rest had quietly disappeared. That's a combination technique. Han Lingxian was shocked. She also had the cultivation method of the 3 Ultimates Holy Swords, but she had only reached the Moon Sword. Yiguchin, on the other hand, could even perform the combination technique. The gap between people was really huge. I'm not weak in terms of talent in the sword Dao, but compared to young Master Dugu, it's like comparing a firefly to the moon. Han Lingxian muttered in disappointment. At this moment, Yiguchin was the center of everyone's attention. When he performed the combination technique, a sword light shot up into the sky and a beautiful moon accompanied by twinkling stars appeared. Stars and moon appeared at the same time, sword energy filled the sky. A powerful move, coupled with the support of the 9-dragon thunder prison, the power that erupted was extremely strong. When the stars and moon swept out, the void rumbled and more than 10 sword puppets were swept away. Yiguchin turned around once again, and similarly slashed out with his sword, slashing towards the sword puppet that was trapped in the Thunder Dragon Purgatory. Rumble! The sword puppets, which were already defeated by the power of the lightning, were sent flying again and again. Everyone on the peak of Spirit Mountain was silent. Yiguchin's performance had far exceeded their expectations. Most of the sword puppets collapsed on the ground, their power flowing out, and they lost their ability to move. The sword puppet's power came from the formation. Yiguchin had seen through the formation's trajectory, so it was easy for him to break it. Break! Yiguchin shouted coldly, and 9-colored profound lightning wrapped around the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. Violent lightning swept out in all directions, making crackling sounds. Whoosh! The sword light merged with the lightning and swept out in all directions, completely destroying all the sword puppets. The entire Big Dipper sword puppet formation was broken. Silence. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples present seemed to have been petrified. Some disciples took a deep breath, unable to suppress the indescribable shock in their hearts. The Big Dipper sword puppet formation, which could even trap a divine dwelling stage expert for a short period of time, had been broken by Yiguchin. Why is it like this? Ouyang Tianji was completely dumbfounded. He had never expected that Yiguchin would have such a monstrous talent and strength to be able to break such a great formation. This kid is a freak. Bei Xian Elder couldn't help but curse. Jiang Yan's body trembled slightly, and he looked at Yiguchin with even more fear. Ling Moyin's jade-like face also stiffened. At this moment, Yiguchin's behavior was a form of mockery to her. Even with Ling Moyin's cold personality, she couldn't help but have an unnatural expression on her face. In the sky, Luo Feng of the Swordsmanship Hall laughed, "Haha, this kid is somewhat to my liking." Danxia Hall Master of the Elixir Hall smiled, "Hall Master Luo Feng, although your path of the sword is strong, we aren't weak either. I might have to fight for it." Although the various Hall Masters had different positions, most of them cultivated the path of the sword. After all, this was the Sword Dynasty. Danxia Hall Master's attainments in the sword weren't inferior to her attainments in the path of the alchemy. The other 3 Hall Masters also refused to give in. But below, Yiguchin's expression was indifferent. He swept a glance at Ouyang Tianji, Jiang Yan, and the others and said, "Are you satisfied now?" This question made Jiang Yan, Ouyang Tianji, and Ling Moyin's expressions extremely unnatural. Especially Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji. They had previously vowed that Yiguchin didn't have the strength to become a Gold Emblem disciple. But now, the Heavenly Dipper Sword Talisman Grand Formation that was covered in desolation had undoubtedly slapped them fiercely in the face. Sword Demon is indeed Sword Demon. Senior Jiang Yan and the others probably didn't expect this. Hearing the discussions around, Jiang Yan's face turned even paler. Yiguchin ignored them and looked at Ouyang Tianji. "Isn't it time to fulfill your promise?" This. Ouyang Tianji's expression froze. 10 sage to be herbs and 10 sage to be pills. Even with his identity as the heir of the Ouyang family, it was painful. Not to mention the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill. This saint pill was originally used by Ouyang Tianji for his own breakthrough. But because of a moment of greed, he wanted to get Yiguchin's 9-dragon thunder prison, so he took it out as a bet. In the end, he suffered a double loss. As the prodigy of the Ouyang family, you won't go back on your words, right? Yiguchin said indifferently. You. Ouyang Tianji took a deep breath, his chest heaving up and down. Ouyang Tianji, this bet is witnessed by everyone, Bei Xian Elder said indifferently. He didn't like these prodigies, but they joined openly, and with their background, Sacred Cliff College couldn't reject them. Ah. Of course I won't go back on my words. Here you go. Ouyang Tianji took a deep breath and handed everything to Yiguchin. He looked calm, but the veins on his temples were slightly protruding. Obviously, he wasn't as relaxed as he looked. Thank you. I just happen to be lacking some resources. Yiguchin took it and smiled faintly. Cough. Ouyang Tianji's body shook, and a muffled groan came from his chest. Yiguchin's words were like a stab to the heart. Every dog has its day. Ouyang Tianji's clenched fists trembled slightly. He flung his sleeves, not wanting to stay any longer, and left directly. It was just that his back looked a little disheveled. Jiang Yan didn't leave, but his face didn't look too good. Ling Moyin looked at Yi Guqin, sizing him up. She found that Yi Guqin didn't seem to be completely arrogant. Many of the disciples present looked at the resources in Yi Guqin's hands with desire and passion. The most coveted was naturally the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill. Yi Guqin put the quasi-sage elixir and quasi-sage pill into his origin ring. As for the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill, Yi Guqin glanced at it and directly handed it to Mu Xingzu. Moss. Master, seeing Yi Guqin stuffing the jade bottle into her hand, Mu Xingzu was still in a daze. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples around, including Jiang Yan and Ling Moyin, were completely stunned. Yi Guqin actually gave such a precious elemental spirit barrier breaking pill to someone else? Your cultivation has reached the bottleneck of the peak of the 9th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, right? With this pill, you are almost 100% sure that you can break through. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. Master, how can this be? This is such a precious saint elixir, how can Xingzhu? Mu Xingzu's pretty face changed, and she hurriedly handed the jade bottle over. This wasn't just a saint elixir, it was a saint elixir that could break through the bottleneck of the realm. If it were an ordinary person, they wouldn't wait to snatch it. Even if they were brothers or friends, they might turn against each other because of this pill. I'm not in a hurry for the time being. You can use this pill. Besides. Yi Guqin paused for a moment, then continued. If it's just to break through to the divine dwelling stage, the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill doesn't matter much to me. Yi Guqin's indifferent words spread across the entire spirit mountain. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples fell silent. There was no lack of envy and jealousy in their eyes. Those with monstrous talent could be so willful. Chapter 929. Yi Guqin's words made all the Sacred Cliff College disciples roll their eyes. Even the 5 hall masters in the sky were a little stunned. This little guy is indeed interesting. Danxia Palace Master covered her mouth and laughed. It had been a long time since such a prodigy appeared in Sacred Cliff College. Luo Feng of the Sword Technique Palace Master's eyes flashed. He seemed to have made up his mind. Now, the admission ceremony was finally over. Yi Guqin's performance shocked all the Sacred Cliff College disciples. No one would ever think that Yi Guqin's title as the Sword Devil was just an empty title. Okay, next is the badge awarding ceremony. Bei Xian Elder said. This time, Yi Guqin and Kong Kong both received the identity of a golden badge disciple. It was rare to see such a thing in the past admission ceremonies. Yi Guqin took the golden badge, looked at it, and kept it in his origin ring. Seeing Yi Guqin's action, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples were stunned. After all, most of these disciples were around 20 years old. It was the age to show off their talents. After receiving the golden badge, they would pin it on their chest, showing that they were different from others at all times. However, Yi Guqin didn't care and kept it. Many people were surprised by his actions. Not arrogant, not impatient, not seeking an undeserved reputation. Palace Master Luo Feng muttered to himself. Yi Guqin had almost all the qualities of a swordsman. Other than being a little arrogant, Luo Feng was very satisfied with Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's action made Ling Moyin and Jiang Yan feel uncomfortable. Their badges were worn on their chests at all times. Kong Kong, on the other hand, happily put the golden badge on. After all, he was still a child. Hee, alright, you are now officially Sacred Cliff College's Gold Emblem disciples. Don't think that being a Gold Emblem disciple is only a status symbol. I'll ask Su Fan to bring you to receive the benefits of being a Golden Emblem disciple later, Bei Xian Elder said with a smile. Thank you, Elder. Yi Guqin nodded. This was what he cared about the most. After that, Yan worried guest, Han Lingxian and the others also received silver badges, while the rest received bronze badges. The admission ceremony was finally over. At this moment, Palace Master Luo Feng, who was in the sky, said, "Dugu Wubai, are you willing to become my disciple?" As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings fell silent. Many disciples were surprised. Generally speaking, the new disciples that entered the academy would mostly be chosen by some elder-level figures. As for the 5 palace masters, they were only here to observe the ceremony. Unless they were truly monstrous geniuses, they would not take the initiative to recruit disciples. However, on second thought, with Yi Guqin's performance, it seemed to be reasonable. I also want such a disciple. Dugu Wubai, are you willing to become my disciple? I don't only know how to make pills, Danxia Palace Master said with a smile. Dugu Wubai, if you become my disciple, you will have a better future. Aren't you going to challenge the sacred mountain in 3 months? During this time, I will do my best to teach you. The other 3 palace masters also spoke at the same time. Looking at Yi Guqin, who was being fought over by the 5 palace masters, the jaws of all the disciples dropped to the ground. Sometimes, the gap between people was just that big. Looking at the 5 palace masters, if it were an ordinary disciple, they might be overjoyed. However, for Yi Guqin, acknowledging a master was indeed a little redundant. Yi Guqin saluted the 5 palace masters and said in a sincere tone, "Thank you for your appreciation, palace masters, but I have no intention of acknowledging a master." Huh? In the sky, the expressions of the 5 palace masters froze. Not only that, but the noise of the crowd also came to an abrupt end. What did they just hear? Yi Guqin actually rejected the invitation of a palace master. The 5 palace masters were the strongest people in the entire Sacred Cliff College, other than the dean and great elder Yi Mei. Only gold emblem disciples were qualified to be apprenticed to a palace master. Little friend Dugu, don't speak nonsense. Even Bei Xian elder reminded him softly. Most people came to the academy for one of 2 reasons. One was to obtain cultivation resources and treasures. The second was to be taught by a famous master. With the experience and strength of the 5 palace masters, it was more than enough to teach gold emblem disciples. Dugu Wubai, I know your strength, and I also understand that a swordsman should have pride and sharpness. However, if you refuse to acknowledge a master because of this, then you are a little foolish. Palace Master Luo Feng frowned slightly. He indeed admired Yi Guqin's character, talent, and strength. However, if Yi Guqin was arrogant to this extent, then it would be a little unpleasant. Yi Guqin was also helpless. Not to mention that until now, he only acknowledged one master in his heart, and that was Feng Manlu. He had his own understanding of the path of the sword, and he would walk his own path of the sword. Rashly acknowledging a master wasn't a good thing for Yi Guqin. Furthermore, Yi Guqin still had Su Qingyu in his body. Wouldn't a heavens trial saint be more able to teach Yi Guqin than these palace masters who were at the night level? Therefore, Yi Guqin refused. Thank you for your appreciation, palace master. However, I really don't have the intention to acknowledge a master. Yi Guqin cupped his hands again. There wasn't any arrogance in his words. They were very peaceful and sincere. However, in the eyes of outsiders, Yi Guqin's actions were still arrogant. Dugu Wubai, that's enough. Ling Moyin couldn't help but tremble with anger. Yi Guqin was surprised. How did he provoke Ling Moyin again? Palace Master Luo Feng is also senior sister Ling's master, Su Fan reminded him in a low voice. I see. Yi Guqin understood. Ling Moyin was Palace Master Luo Feng's disciple, and he had rejected Palace Master Luo Feng, so Ling Moyin was definitely unhappy. Dugu Wubai, your arrogance is really disgusting. If you don't have Master's guidance, you won't have a chance to pass the Saint Mountain in 3 months. Ling Moyin was a little exasperated at his failure to live up to her expectations. Yi Guqin was silent, shaking his head. Chi, how ignorant. Without anyone to guide you, I'll see what you have to pass the Saint Mountain in 3 months. Jiang Yan's expression returned to normal, looking like he was enjoying the show. Since that's the case, all right then. Luo Feng looked indifferently at Yiguchen. He wasn't going to argue with a gold emblem disciple. However, it was obvious that he wouldn't have a good impression of Yiguchen either. Danxia Palace Master and the others shook their heads in pity. Yiguchen was a rare gem. However, he was too arrogant. What about you, punk? Danxia Palace Master looked at Kong Kong. With Kong Kong's age, the strength he displayed was definitely monstrous. Kong Kong is willing to become Danxia Palace Master's disciple. Kong Kong said without hesitation. Oh. Danxia Palace Master was surprised. Kong Kong actually agreed so easily. The other 4 palace masters were also surprised. Because Sister Danxia is very pretty. Kong Kong's face was slightly red as he twisted his fingers in embarrassment. All the Sacred Cliff College disciples' jaws dropped to the ground. Daring to tease the palace master, this little monk had a bright future. Chapter 930. Hee hee, what an interesting little guy. None of you can compete with me. In the sky, Danxia Temple Mistress giggled when she saw this. She was dressed in a purple robe, with a graceful temperament and a beautiful face. Although she was not as enchanting as Wu Hongyan, she had her own unique charm. Kong Kong's words, if it were any other man, would definitely be offensive. However, Kong Kong was only 11 or 12 years old. He was chubby and somewhat cute, so when he said this, it made Danxia Temple Mistress even more amused. After that, Han Lingxian, Yan Chou Ku, and the others also chose their own masters. As for the remaining Bronze Emblem disciples, they would also be guided by elders. In short, in this batch of disciples, only Yiguchen was alone and did not have a master. Dugu Wubai, in 3 months, I'd like to see how you will perform. Luo Feng Palace Master said, his voice was neither sad nor happy. Although he would not argue with Yiguchen, he still had a barrier in his heart. I'm also very curious. Danxia Temple Mistress said lightly. Although Yiguchen could not be said to have offended the 5 temple mistresses, he obviously left a very bad impression. Yiguchen did not explain anything. Anyway, everything would be clear in 3 months. Just as all the disciples and elders were about to leave. Suddenly, there was a burst of laughter. Congratulations to Sacred Cliff College. Hearing this voice, many elders and disciples who were about to leave stopped in their tracks. Everyone was surprised and looked at the source of the voice. When Yiguchen heard this voice, his eyes suddenly moved and he also looked over. A masked figure with an elegant temperament stepped through the air and arrived. This person was not just anyone, but Yiguchen's old acquaintance. Kenpo. It's Kenpo. Yiguchen said to himself. He originally planned to find Kenpo after he had a firm foothold in Sacred Cliff College. He did not expect Kenpo to arrive first. So it's the Sword Son. Bei Xian Elder smiled faintly. Kenpo was the Sword Son of the Loose Cultivators, so he had a good relationship with Sacred Cliff College. Greetings, Your Highness Kenpo. The Sacred Cliff College disciples cupped their fists slightly. The status of a Sword Son was comparable to that of a prince of a country. These temple masters and elders didn't need to bow, but the disciples of Sacred Cliff College still had to bow. Luo Feng smiled and asked, I don't know what the congratulations are about, Sword Son. Of course it's to congratulate Sacred Cliff College for producing another prodigy on the sword roll, Kenpo said as he looked at Yiguchen. Prodigy of the sword roll, could it be? Bei Xian Elder suddenly looked at Yiguchen. Everyone's eyes were also focused on Yiguchen. In fact, they all knew that with Yiguchen's strength, there was no doubt that he would be on the sword roll. The only suspense was Yiguchen's ranking. The sword roll was a list issued by the Sword Dao Alliance, and it would change in real time. However, generally speaking, the top positions rarely changed. Kenpo smiled faintly and said, I'm sure everyone knows that this prodigy on the sword roll is Dugu Wubai. As for his ranking, Kenpo paused, and everyone present pricked up their ears. 10th on the sword roll. Kenpo's voice spread, and the world fell silent for a moment before a huge uproar broke out. What, he actually entered the top 10 on the sword roll. Tisk tsk, it's his first time on the sword roll, and he's already ranked 10th. Many disciples whispered to each other, clearly surprised by Yiguchen's ranking. He's ranked 10th on the sword roll. Ling Moyne clenched her fists tightly and bit her lips with an extremely complicated expression. This was because her brother, Ling Mo Shu, had once been ranked 10th on the sword roll. Jiang Yan shook his head and shouted, "No, that's impossible. Dugu Wubai's strength hasn't reached the divine dwelling stage, and he hasn't fought with any divine dwelling stage heaven prides. What qualifications does he have to be in the top 10? Yiguchen's ranking on the sword roll had suddenly surpassed him. Jiang Yan couldn't accept this. Are you questioning the prestige of the Sword Dao Alliance? Kenpo glanced at Jiang Yan. No. No. Jiang Yan's voice lowered, but his eyes were filled with a strong unwillingness. However, his words had indeed caused some controversy. Yiguchen's performance in the 5 Academy selection was unquestionable. But even Hua Xingjie was only ranked 19th on the sword roll. Although Yiguchen had defeated a group of heaven prides, he hadn't fought with any divine dwelling stage heaven prides. His strength was naturally doubtful. Congratulations, Brother Dugu. Kenpo gave a cupped fist salute to Yiguchen. Yiguchen smiled faintly. They were both well aware of each other's intentions. Some of the disciples' eyes were filled with disbelief when they saw that Saber 9 was being so courteous to Yiguchen. But on second thought, the top 10 heaven prides on the sword roll weren't inferior to the 13 sword princes in terms of strength. I wonder if I can have a chat with Brother Dugu? Kenpo asked with a smile. I couldn't ask for more. Yiguchen also smiled. Yiguchen then excused himself and left with Kenpo and the others. The entire admission ceremony was completely over, and the crowd dispersed. But it was obvious that the news of Yiguchen being in the top 10 of the sword roll would soon spread throughout the sword dynasty. The name of the sword devil would climb to another peak. Sigh, little friend Dugu has created miracles time and time again. I wonder if he will be able to create a real miracle in 3 months. Bei Xian elder sighed inwardly. He knew that no matter how glorious Yiguchen was now, if he failed to pass the sacred mountain in 3 months, then all of his reputation would be completely destroyed. As the saying goes, the higher you stand, the harder you fall. As for Jiang Yan, he was naturally waiting for Yiguchen's failure in 3 months. After Yiguchen completely obtained the identity of a Golden Emblem disciple, his residence was also confirmed. The residence of a Golden Emblem disciple was a superior cave residence in the Divine Cliff Utopia. The spiritual energy in the Divine Cliff Utopia was already shocking enough. It was at least 5 times more than the outside world. The spiritual energy in the superior cave residence was more than 10 times more than the outside world. It was extremely helpful for Yiguchen's true chi cultivation. Under Su Fan's lead, Yiguchen also arrived at his own cave residence. Mu Xingzu and the others did not disturb Yiguchen. In an instant, only Yiguchen and Kenpo were left in the cave residence. Should I call you Brother Dugu or Brother Yi? Kenpo said with a smile. Brother Kenpo, how have you been? Yiguchen also smiled warmly. After going through so much, it was the most emotional to see an old friend. After the 5 Academy selection, when I heard the news and saw the Sword Sun token, I immediately concluded that it might be you. However, I still didn't dare to confirm it. After all, you took the 9 deaths without regrets pill. Kenpo sighed. Perhaps the heavens don't want me to die and want me to take revenge. Yiguchen did not explain further. Kenpo's expression turned serious. Brother Yi, your enemies are the overlords. They are indeed powerful and terrifying. The most important thing for you now is to become stronger. That's right. I naturally have a plan to become the Sword Sun and participate in the Prodigy battlefield. Yiguchen's eyes lit up. Brother Yi, Kenpo has a presumptuous request. I hope you will agree to it. Kenpo's tone suddenly turned serious as he cupped his hands solemnly at Yiguchen. Oh, What is it? Just say it, Yiguchin also said solemnly. Become the Jinkui and save the Sword Dynasty. Kenpo said in a deep voice. Chapter 931. Become Jinkui and save the Sword Dynasty. Yiguchin was a little confused. He shook his head and laughed. Brother Kenpo must be joking. What ability do I have to save the Sword Dynasty? Not to mention that Yiguchin only had the strength of the World Spirit Bridge. Even if he broke through to the Divine Dwelling stage, he still wouldn't be able to reach the apex of the Sword Dynasty. It was a little exaggerated to say that Yiguchin alone could save the Sword Dynasty. Saber 9 sighed deeply and said, Brother Yi, I'm sure you've noticed it as well. Although the Sword Dynasty appears to be calm on the surface, there's an undercurrent surging beneath the surface. In reality, Lord Chief has already entered the Skyless Sword Realm for 5 years and has yet to return. The Skyless Sword Realm, one of the 4 great secret domains of the Sword Dynasty. Yiguchin raised his brows. Yes, the Skyless Sword Realm is the most mysterious of the 4 great secret domains. It is said that this secret domain was left behind by the 7th generation Sword Master, Wu Ming, Kenpo said. The 7th generation Sword Master. Yiguchin's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect to find traces of the 7th generation Sword Master in the Sword Dynasty. Yiguchin didn't know much about the 7th generation Sword Master. But Yiguchin had seen the 7th generation Sword Master's ultimate technique, the Sacred Sword of the Universe, on the sword-seeking steel of the Saint Yuan Dynasty. Yiguchin was a little curious about the 7th generation Sword Master who had chosen Yi Tianqing. But after hearing Kenpo's words, Yiguchin's brows tightened. You mean, the Alliance Master of the Sword Dao Alliance? Yes, the Alliance Master of the Sword Dao Alliance, the name of the proud divine continent, I believe you have heard of it. Kenpo couldn't hide the admiration in his voice. Yiguchin couldn't help but sigh. Facing the cold sword of the heavens alone, why should I be ashamed of being a hero? The proud divine continent, I have long heard of him. The leader of the Sword Dao Alliance was simply too famous. As the leader of the 100 great dynasties, the leader of the Sword Dynasty, the strength of the proud divine continent, although the strength of a false saint, but even the real heavenly tribulation saints, dare not underestimate him. The proud divine continent even had an astonishing battle record of fighting against 4 great false saints. Alone facing the heavens with a cold sword, why should I be ashamed of being a hero? This poem is the best portrayal of the proud divine continent. 5 years ago, in order to find an opportunity to break through to the heavenly tribulation saint realm, the Alliance Master directly entered the heavenless sword realm. In the following 5 years, he never came out. The Vice Alliance Master relied on the heavens to announce that the Alliance Master was cultivating in seclusion, but now, I'm afraid there are many rumors. Kenpo's face was full of worry. Heavenly love. Yiguchin's eyes flashed. Yiguchin had heard of the Sword Sovereign Yi Tianqing, the deputy alliance leader of the Sword Dao Alliance. Previously, when Wu Hongyan said that the person she liked was the Sword Sovereign, she was referring to Yi Tianqing. What does the so-called Jinkui battle have to do with saving the Sword Dynasty? Yiguchin asked. Brother Yi, you may not know, but this time the Jinkui is a member of the aristocratic family camp, and his identity is very mysterious. Outsiders do not know who his true identity is, but there is no doubt that if the Alliance Master still does not appear, the Hua family and other forces will not sit still, and will support the Jinkui to take the position. Kenpo said solemnly. Yiguchin nodded slightly, understanding. To put it simply, the proud divine continent had disappeared in the heavenless sword realm for 5 years. The Hua family and other false saint aristocratic families would not sit idly by, and may use the excuse of supporting the Jinkui to control the Sword Dynasty. Kenpo and the others were not strong enough to compete with the mysterious Jinkui. If the Sky Pride of the Rogue Cultivator camp did not win the position of Jinkui in this battle, then the Hua family and other aristocratic families could use the Jinkui to take the position. Even so, Brother Kenpo, why do you think that I can win the position of Jinkui? Yiguchin could not help but ask. Someone who can compete with Gu Xiaoyang and Di Haotian, and who has no fear in the face of overlords, to win the position of Jiankuei shouldn't be that difficult, right? Kenpo said. You think too highly of me, brother Kenpo. However, my goal is the battlefield of Sky Prides. I have no intention of getting involved in the struggle of the Sword Dynasty. Yi Guqin hesitated for a moment, then said. Kenpo sighed and said, I don't want to trouble you, brother Yi, but this matter may affect the stability of the Sword Dynasty. Right now, the Sword Dynasty is in chaos internally, and the other dynasties are eyeing it covetously. It's really dangerous, Yi Guqin frowned slightly. He did not expect the Sword Dynasty to be in such a bad situation. For some reason, he suddenly remembered the words of the crippled old man in Thunder City. He said that the Sword Dynasty was about to be plunged into chaos and the waters were very deep. Should he get involved, or should he choose to ignore it? Yi Guqin pondered for a moment. Brother Yi, I don't ask for anything else. When the time comes, our rogue cultivator camp will act. If we still can't get the position of Jiankuei, then please help us, brother Yi. How about it? Kenpo said sincerely. All right. Yi Guqin sighed. Kenpo had helped him before, so Yi Guqin really couldn't refuse. Then thank you, brother Yi. Don't worry, if brother Yi gets the position of Jiankuei, there will be a lot of benefits. In the future, you may even become the ruler of the Sword Dynasty. Kenpo was overjoyed. Yi Guqin smiled but did not say anything. He did not have any ambition to become the ruler of the Sword Dynasty. After another round of discussion, Yi Guqin had a better understanding of the Sword Dynasty's situation. Then, Kenpo left. Looks like I have to work hard on my cultivation. Yi Guqin thought to himself. There was a sense of urgency in his heart. Breaking through the sacred mountain, seizing the position of Jiankuei, and even participating in the prodigy battlefield required his own strength. Fortunately, I've joined the academy and can cultivate in peace. Yi Guqin murmured. Senior brother Dugu, your cultivation resources are here. Su Fan's voice came from outside the cave. After Yi Guqin officially became a Gold Emblem disciple, Su Fan also called him senior brother. Come in. Yi Guqin said. Su Fan entered the cave and handed a vitality ring to Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin also revealed a look of surprise on his face after a thorough investigation. There were a total of 15 quasi-sage pills, 20 quasi-sage herbs, and some supreme-grade mystical weapon-level swords and armors. There was also a low-grade royal sword technique, divine sword lightning controlling technique. They must have taken into account that Yi Guqin had the 9-dragon thunder prison. In addition, there were a total of 300,000 heaven crystals, which was equivalent to 30 million crystal jades. This number made Yi Guqin speechless. It should be said that Yi Guqin only obtained 1 million heaven crystals when he plundered the Sovereign Cave. Sacred Cliff College gave him 300,000 heaven crystals at once. Is this the treatment of a Gold Emblem disciple? Yi Guqin couldn't help but sigh. He finally understood why Jiang Yan and the others were so jealous after knowing that he could directly become a Gold Emblem disciple. If it were any other normal person, they would probably be envious as well. Senior brother Dugu, not only that, you can also go to the Spirit Gathering Pavilion and the Sword Spirit Cave to cultivate for 10 days every month. After breaking through to the Divine Dwelling stage, you can even enter the Divine Dwelling Elixir Pool to cultivate, Su Fan said enviously. Not to mention the Divine Dwelling Elixir Pool, the Spirit Gathering Pavilion and the Sword Spirit Cave were treasured places that all Sacred Cliff College disciples yearned for. But for Bronze Emblem and Silver Emblem disciples, they had to complete missions to enter these two treasured places. It was different for Gold Emblem disciples. They had 10 days of free cultivation every month. Chapter 932. Su Fan had already explained to Yi Guqin the use of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion and the Sword Soul Cave. Therefore, Yi Guqin was well aware of the value of this privilege. What made Yi Guqin frown was that what he needed the most now was to recover his knowledge sea. To recover his knowledge sea, he needed soul crystals or sacred herbs that could nourish the soul. Yiguchin hesitated for a while, but still decided to ask. I've never heard of soul crystals, but there are a few sacred herbs that can nourish the soul in the college, but they are very precious, Su Fan said. Quasi-sacred herbs and sacred herbs seem to only differ by one word, but their value was worlds apart. Sacred Cliff College could easily give Yiguchin 15 quasi-sacred herbs. But it was impossible for them to give Yiguchin a sacred herb directly. Perhaps only the disciples of the Holy Emblem were qualified to get sacred herbs for free. Then how can I get sacred herbs? Yiguchin was not disappointed and continued to ask. If you want to get sacred herbs, I'm afraid you have to do missions, Su Fan said. The 5 major colleges of the Sword Dynasty did not cultivate flowers in a greenhouse. Every student of the college would participate in various missions and experience real life and death battles. This was also why the Sword Dynasty could produce so many prodigies with extraordinary combat strength. If that's the case, take me there, Yiguchin said with a faint smile. Senior Dugu, if you want to get sacred herbs that nourish the soul, I'm afraid normal missions won't be enough, Su Fan said. Sacred herbs were already precious enough. As for sacred herbs that nourish the soul, they must be even more precious. No problem, let's go take a look first, Yiguchin said. Then, Su Fan brought Yiguchin to the mission hall. The mission hall was where Sacred Cliff College's daily affairs were handled. Giving out missions was one of them. Yiguchin did not plan to keep doing missions to train himself. He just needed to get sacred herbs. As soon as Yiguchin entered the mission hall, he saw a huge screen. Many words were scrolling on the screen. Normally speaking, the academy wouldn't issue missions that were too difficult. For example, killing a supreme expert or something like that wouldn't be a form of training, but rather suicide. These missions were all within the scope of what the academy disciples could handle. Senior Brother Dugu, the missions are categorized into normal, difficult, and hell level. Normally, only by completing the hell level mission can one obtain the sacred medicine as a reward, Su Fan said. Yiguchin frowned slightly and glanced over. There was no hell rank mission on the screen. Generally speaking, only disciples of the divine dwelling stage can complete a hell level mission. There was a hell level mission some time ago, and it was taken by Senior Brother Xuanlian, Su Fan said. Yiguchin nodded slightly. As soon as he entered the academy, he asked Su Fan where the Xuanlian was. In the end, the Xuanlian had already gone out to do a mission. It must have been the hell level mission. Yiguchin glanced at the screen and found that most of the missions were normal missions. There was only one difficult mission. If I accept a difficult mission, will I be able to obtain the sacred medicine? Yiguchin asked. Su Fan spread out his hands and said, about 5 difficult missions are barely equivalent to a hell-level mission. Then I'll accept this one, Yiguchin said. He was determined to obtain the sacred medicine. Moreover, Yiguchin knew that with his true strength, it shouldn't take him too long to complete the difficult mission. Yiguchin walked forward to accept the mission. When a Sacred Cliff College disciple saw Yiguchin's arrival, his spirits were lifted and he hurriedly shouted, "Greetings, Senior Brother Dugu." Yiguchin had completely revealed his talent and strength during the admission ceremony. Therefore, there wasn't a single disciple in Sacred Cliff College who was so blind as to treat Yiguchin coldly. "I'll accept this mission," Yiguchin said indifferently. This difficult mission requires 3 gold emblem disciples, and Senior Brother Dugu happens to be the last one, the disciple said. "Oh, who are the other 2? Yiguchin asked. "It's Senior Sister Ling and Senior Brother Jiang," the disciple said truthfully. "Ling Moyin and Jiang Yan." Yiguchin murmured and then nodded. Although these 2 people didn't get along with him, Yiguchin didn't care about this. The mission will begin in a month. The details are here. The disciple handed over a scroll. Yiguchin didn't even look at it and directly put it into his origin ring. Since there was still a month's time, Yiguchin could use this opportunity to cultivate and consolidate his cultivation. Looking at Yiguchin's back, the disciple couldn't help but click his tongue and sigh. As expected of the Sword Devil. He didn't even look at the difficult mission. But this time, 3 gold emblem disciples were sent out together. This mission shouldn't be that simple. The disciple thought to himself as he shook his head. After accepting the mission, Yiguchin returned to his cave residence. Not long after, Smoky Worry Traveler came to his door and humbly asked Yiguchin for advice on swordsmanship. Yiguchin had a good impression of Smoky Worry Traveler. Although they weren't familiar with each other, there was no problem with his character and trustworthiness. Therefore, Yiguchin was very willing to give him advice. In the end, under Yiguchin's advice, Smoky Worry Traveler was enlightened and suddenly saw the light. He was also quite grateful to Yiguchin. After that, Mu Xingzu went to look for Yiguchin unhappily. It turned out that the Tianxian College wanted Mu Xingzu to go back. Xingzhu doesn't want to go back to Tianxian College. Mu Xingzu said reluctantly. She was very greedy for the feeling of peace and comfort by Yiguchin's side. This time you've obtained the Origin Spirit Breakthrough Pill. You can go back to the college and break through to the Divine Dwelling stage. Yiguchin patted Mu Xingzu's shoulder. Okay. Mu Xingzu's eyes flashed with determination. She also knew that Yiguchin's path ahead was filled with enemies and obstacles. Only by becoming stronger could she help Yiguchin and stay by his side. After some small talk, Mu Xingzu also reluctantly left Sacred Cliff College. I'll cultivate in peace for a month. Yiguchin was finally completely free. He directly went to the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. The Spirit Gathering Pavilion was located in a valley in the Divine Cliff Utopia. The entire valley was shaped like a funnel, and the surrounding spiritual energy surged into it. In the valley, a pavilion stood tall. The Spirit Gathering Pavilion was surrounded by the natural terrain of the valley that could gather spiritual energy. Inside the pavilion, there was an earth-level spirit gathering array that made the spiritual energy even denser. There was a supremacy elder guarding the entrance of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. Seeing Yiguchin's arrival, the elder did not put on any airs. He smiled and nodded at Yiguchin, then opened the Spirit Gathering Pavilion to the public. There are 3 levels in the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. You're a Gold Emblem disciple, so you can enter the top level to cultivate for 10 days, the elder said. Thank you, elder. Yiguchin cupped his hands and stepped into the Spirit Gathering Pavilion. There were many rooms in the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, and disciples were cultivating in many rooms. Yiguchin felt that the spiritual energy on the first level was already extremely dense. He did not stop and stepped onto the second level. There were even fewer rooms on the second level, but the spiritual energy was even denser. Yiguchin continued to go up to the third level. There were only 10 rooms on the third level. Yiguchin realized that there were countless droplets of water floating in the air on the third level. These droplets of water were all spiritual liquid condensed from spiritual energy, and they fell like rain. What a wonderful place for cultivation. I wonder if I can reach a higher level after cultivating here for 10 days. Yiguchin's eyes lit up, and he was shocked. Chapter 933. At the Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth Realm, part of the genuine Qi in the Sea of Qi had already turned into liquid. If one were to absorb the spiritual Qi of heaven and earth to cultivate, the speed would undoubtedly be much slower. But on the third floor of the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, the rich spiritual Qi had already turned into spiritual liquid, which was perfect for Yiguchin at his current stage. This was the benefit that Yiguchin received after entering the academy. If he was alone in the Sword Dynasty, he would definitely not receive such generous treatment. Yiguchin suppressed the sigh in his heart and prepared to enter a compartment to cultivate. But at this moment, he suddenly felt that in another compartment, there seemed to be a cultivation fluctuation of spiritual qi. Obviously, there were other people cultivating on the third floor. Because there was a protective array outside each compartment to prevent sudden disturbances, Yiguchin did not mind. He chose a compartment and entered it. He sat cross-legged on the ground, calmed his mind, and began to cultivate. He activated the devouring power in his body and turned it into a miniature black hole. In an instant, Yiguchin seemed to have turned into a bottomless black hole. The spiritual liquid floating in the air turned into a whirlpool and was absorbed by Yiguchin's body. The spiritual liquid was extremely pure and thick. Yiguchen felt that his cultivation was obviously loosening. He might be able to use the spirit gathering pavilion to break through to the 5th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. Just like this, 2 days passed. In 2 days, the spiritual liquid in Yiguchen's compartment was almost completely absorbed. Yiguchen was already immersed in cultivation and did not notice. He began to absorb the spiritual chi of the entire 3rd floor of the spirit gathering pavilion. At this moment, in another compartment, a handsome man in white was sitting cross-legged. It was Ouyang Tianji. Ouyang Tianji had already reached the bottleneck of the 9th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. He was waiting for it to be completely consolidated and he would use the elemental spirit breaking pill to break through. But because of this accident, he lost the elemental spirit breaking pill to Yiguchen. Without the divine elixir pills, Ouyang Tianji could only come to the spirit gathering pavilion to accumulate for a breakthrough. In fact, Ouyang Tianji had already accumulated enough. Taking the elemental spirit barrier breaking pill could greatly increase his chances of success, but without this pill, it didn't mean that he couldn't break through. When I break through to the divine dwelling stage, I will also charge into Saint Crossing Mountain. No matter what, I must suppress Dugu Wubai. Ouyang Tianji had an obsession in his heart. As the genius of the Ouyang clan, he had always been in the limelight since he was young. Furthermore, he was shrewd. All along, it had been others who had suffered losses while Ouyang Tianji had benefited. However, this was the first time he had fallen into the hands of Yiguchen. Therefore, Ouyang Tianji would never let this matter rest. Why do I feel that the spiritual liquid is slightly thinner? Ouyang Tianji, who was sitting cross-legged in cultivation and preparing to break through, felt something strange. However, he didn't think too much about it and continued to calm his mind and concentrate. Because he was very close to breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. On the other side, Yiguchen had been immersed in cultivation. The devouring power was completely displayed. The spiritual liquid on the 3rd floor of the spirit gathering pavilion turned into a whirlpool at a speed visible to the naked eye, and was then devoured and refined by Yiguchen. The devouring power was extremely tyrannical. Even if Yiguchen couldn't completely use the devouring power of the god devourer, even if he could only borrow 1/10,000th of it, the effect would still be incomparably powerful. After another 3 days, the spiritual liquid on the 3rd floor of the spirit gathering pavilion became increasingly thin. What's going on? Who is cultivating? Ouyang Tianji felt that something was wrong. He was about to break through, but the embarrassing thing was that the concentration of spiritual liquid in the spirit gathering pavilion seemed to have weakened a lot. And the most terrible thing was that Ouyang Tianji had already entered the state of breaking through. If he gave up halfway, the consequences would be very serious. Damn it! Ouyang Tianji once again activated his cultivation technique, erupting with a similar devouring power. But this devouring power was far inferior to Yiguchen's devouring power. In the blink of an eye, a total of 9 days had passed. Even the elder guarding outside the spirit gathering pavilion felt that something was wrong. What's going on? The spiritual energy has decreased by so much. The elder was stunned. He suddenly looked towards the 3rd floor and realized that there were 2 spiritual whirlpools, one big and one small. Those 2, could it be Dugu Wubai and Ouyang Tianji? The elder's face froze. The small whirlpool was fine. Although it absorbed a lot of spiritual energy, it wasn't shocking. But the big whirlpool was terrifying. It was like the eye of a storm, devouring all the spiritual energy around it. Elder, what's going on? The spiritual energy on the 1st floor has dried up. Yeah, the 2nd floor is about the same. Could it be that those senior brothers have taken up the 3rd floor? Not long after, the disciples on the 1st and 2nd floors of the spirit gathering pavilion all ran out noisily. There are only 2 people on the 3rd floor of the spirit gathering pavilion. The elder smiled bitterly and shook his head. The hundreds of disciples that came out of the spirit gathering pavilion all looked towards the 3rd floor. When they saw the whirlpool that was as huge as a tornado, many people were dumbfounded. Who is cultivating, and why is there such a big movement? It's only Ouyang Tianji and Duge Wubai, the elder said. That big whirlpool, could it be senior brother Ouyang? He is already at the peak of the 9th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth, and is likely to break through to the divine dwelling stage. It should be. What bad luck, I didn't expect senior brother Ouyang to break through. Many disciples shook their heads. If one broke through to the divine dwelling stage, it would indeed consume a huge amount of spiritual energy. But after a while, many disciples curiously looked on. They wanted to know if Ouyang Tianji could break through to the divine dwelling stage. At this moment, Ouyang Tianji was already suffering unspeakably. Damn it, who is it? If I find out, I won't forgive you. In the 3rd floor's compartment, Ouyang Tianji's eyes were bloodshot, and his face was terrifyingly pale. He had already used up all the quasi-saint medicines and quasi-saint pills in his origin ring. But even so, it was still not enough to break through. Ouyang Tianji tried his best to activate his cultivation method, wanting to swallow more spiritual energy, but how could it be compared to Yi Guqin's tyrannical devouring power? Soon, Ouyang Tianji's qi was overturned, and his aura became chaotic. The skin on his body swelled to a blood-red color, like a lobster that had rolled out of a pot of boiling oil. This was the sign of a qi deviation during a breakthrough. Puqi. Suddenly, blood flowed out from Ouyang Tianji's 7 orifices, and he spurted out a large mouthful of blood. He instantly fell to the ground, and his body twitched uncontrollably as if he was being cut by 1,000 blades. His aura fell from the verge of the divine dwelling stage all the way to the 9th level, and not even the peak. At this point, Ouyang Tianji had failed to break through, and he had lost at least a few months' worth of spiritual energy. Who is it? Ouyang Tianji roared, the veins on his neck bulging, and blood dripping onto the ground. Cutting off one's opportunity was like killing one's parents. Let alone breaking through to the divine dwelling stage at such an important juncture. Ouyang Tianji was so angry that his internal organs were burning, and he wished he could cut the person who had absorbed the spiritual energy into 1,000 pieces. And in another compartment, outside Yi Guqin's body, spiritual energy was like rain. His entire body was shrouded in a dazzling brilliance, and his aura was strong. After absorbing the spiritual energy of almost the entire spirit-gathering pavilion, Yi Guqin's heaven and earth spirit bridge in his qi had condensed another section. His cultivation had officially broken through to the 5th level of the heaven and earth spirit bridge. Chapter 934. I've broken through to the 5th level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Yi Guqin, who was sitting cross-legged in the room, suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of light flashed past. His aura had reached a new level again. The spiritual liquid around me has decreased by so much. Yi Guqin also reacted. But he immediately understood. Yi Guqin's sea of qi was different from ordinary people. It was the limit of 10,000 feet. Ordinary martial artists might not consume too much spirit qi when breaking through a small level. But for Yi Guqin, even a small breakthrough would consume far more spirit qi than ordinary people. I need to consolidate it again. There was still 1 day left. Yi Guqin did not rush out. Instead, he took out a quasi-sage elixir and consumed it to consolidate his cultivation at the 5th level of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. On the other side, Ouyang Tianji walked out of the room. His white robe was stained with blood, and he staggered as he walked. Obviously, the failure of this breakthrough had caused great harm to Ouyang Tianji. He walked to the room where Yi Guqin was, and his eyes were bloodshot. It's you. Who are you? Ouyang Tianji roared and could not help but attack. But outside each room, there was a protective array to prevent disturbances. There was also a sound insulation effect, so Yi Guqin could not be disturbed. Ouyang Tianji walked out of the spirit-gathering pavilion with bloodshot eyes. Seeing Ouyang Tianji appear, the disciples who were watching from the sidelines immediately swarmed forward. Some of the disciples who wanted to flatter Ouyang Tianji saw Ouyang Tianji's miserable appearance before they could even congratulate him. What's going on? Why is senior brother Ouyang's aura still at the 9th level? No, it feels even weaker than before. Did senior brother Ouyang fail to break through? These disciples were stunned. Ouyang Tianji's face darkened. He found the old guard and asked, "Elder, who else went up to the third level?" "Dugu Wubai," the elder said lightly. "What? It's him again." Ouyang Tianji's body trembled, his eyes filled with incomparable scarlet and resentment. Blood rushed to his head. Even a scheming person like him couldn't help but reveal such an expression. It could be seen how deep the anger and resentment in his heart was. When he thought of how he had lost his elemental spirit bottleneck breaking pill to Yiguchen, and now, because of Yiguchen, he had failed to break through and lost several months of spiritual energy for nothing. Ouyang Tianji was so angry that he was trembling. Even his face was trembling slightly. At this moment, Yiguchen, who had completely consolidated his cultivation, finally walked out of the spirit gathering pavilion. Yiguchen was in a very good state at the moment. His aura was strong, and his demeanor was disdainful. It was a stark contrast to the embarrassing appearance of Ouyang Tianji when he came out. Dugu Wubai. Seeing Yiguchen walk out so calmly, Ouyang Tianji almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "Oh, it's you." Yiguchen narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect that the person in the other room was actually Ouyang Tianji. It was really a small world for enemies. However, Yiguchen glanced at Ouyang Tianji's appearance and roughly knew what had happened. "Sorry, it wasn't intentional." Yiguchen nodded lightly and was about to leave. In fact, Yiguchen didn't deliberately want to deal with Ouyang Tianji. Firstly, Yiguchen didn't know that the person in the other room was Ouyang Tianji. Secondly, he was immersed in his cultivation at that time and didn't care about anything else. "Dugu Wubai, you caused me to fail in breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. Do you think you can leave just like that?" Ouyang Tianji clenched his fists, the veins on his temples throbbing. The loss this time, for Ouyang Tianji, was absolutely disastrous. "Stop when it's appropriate." Yiguchen scrunched his brows. Previously, Ouyang Tianji had plotted against him. Yiguchen was already very good that he could say a word of apology. "You must compensate," Ouyang Tianji said coldly and angrily. Yiguchen ignored him. Ouyang Tianji's body flashed, blocking in front of Yiguchen. "Get out of the way," Yiguchen said coldly. The aura of the fifth-level heaven and earth spirit bridge erupted. His chi swept out like a gust of wind, forcing Ouyang Tianji back again and again. "Your chi." Ouyang Tianji's face froze. The chi cultivation that Yiguchen displayed was in no way weaker than his current 9th-level cultivation. "Enough, don't mess around. If you want to fight, go to the battle arena. The spirit gathering pavilion is not a place for you to quarrel," the elder shouted. Feeling the faint threat from Yiguchen's body, coupled with the fact that he had failed in his breakthrough and was injured, Ouyang Tianji could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. "Dugu Wubai, wait." Ouyang Tianji stared at Yiguchen, then turned and left. His bloodshot eyes flickered with a cold and poisonous light. "Dugu Wubai, you seem to have received a mission, then." Looking at Ouyang Tianji's back, Yiguchen frowned slightly. He knew that with Ouyang Tianji's temperament, he would not give up so easily. However, Yiguchen was not someone who would be bullied easily. After cupping his hands slightly at the elder, Yiguchen came to another treasured place in Sacred Cliff College, the Sword Soul Cave. The Sword Soul Cave was a place specially used to comprehend sword intent and swordsmanship. Inside the Sword Soul Cave, there was also an elder guarding it. After seeing that it was Yiguchen, the elder laughed and let him in. Inside the Sword Soul Cave, there were countless caves that extended in all directions. As soon as Yiguchen entered, he felt a surge of sword-based Taoist rhyme. He chose a cave and went deep inside. To his surprise, he found that in the depths of the cave, there were countless glittering stones. Within each stone, there seemed to be sword chi flowing, emitting a shocking Taoist rhyme. "Are these the sword rhyme stones that I obtained from the sword tomb?" Yiguchen thought to himself. The sword rhyme stones in the Sword Soul Cave were obtained from the Sword Tomb, one of the 4 great secret realms of the Sword Dynasty. Yiguchen did not waste any time. In the depths of the cave, where the Taoist rhyme was the thickest, he sat cross-legged and activated the power of the Enlightenment Ancient Tree to comprehend the sword rhyme stones, the Enlightenment Ancient Tree, and Yiguchen's sword demon talent. His comprehension of various sword intents and sword principles increased once again. Yiguchen had been comprehending the 5 elements sword intents for a long time. Now, with the help of the opportunity here, Yiguchen finally broke through the threshold and turned the 5 elements sword principles into the 5 elements sword principles. Now, Yiguchen had a total of 5 elements, edgeless, and azura sword principles. Together with the hard and soft sword principles, there were a total of 4 kinds, which would scare a lot of people to death. Even in the Sword Dynasty, there were very few people who had mastered many types of sword principles. In addition, Yiguchen had also comprehended the Thunderbolt sword intent with the help of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison and the 9-Colored Dark Bomb. Of course, the hardest to comprehend was naturally the creation sword intent of all creation. Even with the help of the Sword Soul Cave and the Enlightenment Ancient Tree, it was not something that could be comprehended in a short time. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Yiguchen had gained a lot, and he had a preliminary understanding of the Thunderbolt sword intent. In addition, Yiguchen had also comprehended the lower royal level sword art, the divine sword lightning controlling technique, and was not far from the initial success. If I want to comprehend the sword intent of all creation, I'm afraid I have to go to the Sword Tomb, one of the 4 great secret realms. Yiguchen muttered to himself. The Sword Soul Cave alone could bring Yiguchen such progress. It was hard to imagine how much he would gain if he could cultivate in the Sword Tomb, one of the 4 great secret realms. It might not be impossible to comprehend the sword intent of all creation. In general, Yiguchen had gained a lot in the 20 days of cultivation in the Spirit Gathering Pavilion and the Sword Soul Cave, and his strength had increased again. Not only did his cultivation break through to rank 5, but he also comprehended the 5 elements sword principles, comprehended the Thunderbolt sword intent, and cultivated the divine sword lightning controlling technique. After his strength increased, Yiguchen could deal with the difficult level mission more easily. There were still 10 days before the mission began. Yiguchen did not idle, and he made use of the 10 days to immerse himself in cultivation. Chapter 935. A month passed quickly. Yiguchen had been cultivating all this time. His life was very fulfilling, and his strength had increased a lot. On this day, Yiguchen slowly opened his eyes in a high-class cave abode. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. The spirit chi in a high-class cave abode was more than 10 times that of the outside world. Although it was not as good as a place like the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, it was still a great help to Yiguchen when he cultivated. After 10 days of cultivation consolidation, Yiguchen had reached his peak state. It's time to complete the mission. Yiguchen got up and went to the mission hall. It had been a month since he received the mission. Today, Yiguchen, Ling Moyin, and Jiang Yan would go on a mission together. Soon, Yiguchen arrived at the mission hall. However, he did not see Ling Moyin and Jiang Yan. The Sacred Cliff College disciple in charge of issuing missions saw Yiguchen, and his expression was slightly unnatural. Where are the 2 of them? Yiguchen stepped forward and asked calmly. That, senior brother Dugu, to tell you the truth, senior sister Ling and senior brother Jiang have already left a few days ago, the disciple said awkwardly. Heh. Are you trying to intimidate me? Yiguchen's lips curled up into a cold smile when he heard this. Ling Moyin and Jiang Yan had left early. It was obvious that they wanted to shake off Yiguchen. They wanted to complete the difficult level mission alone and intimidate Yiguchen. Senior brother Dugu, why don't we change the mission, the disciple advised. In the disciple's eyes, Yiguchen had just arrived at Sacred Cliff College, and it was his first time going on a difficult level mission. If he did not have Ling Moyin and Jiang Yan's support, he would be in danger. No need. Yiguchen shook his head. He took out the scroll that recorded the contents of the mission and glanced at it. Go to the ancient chaos wasteland and explore a mysterious mine. Yiguchin muttered to himself as he looked at the scroll. The ancient chaos wasteland was located tens of thousands of miles north of the Sword Dynasty. It was a wasteland located between the gaps of many dynasties. The biggest characteristic of the ancient chaos wasteland was that it had many rich mineral deposits and produced all kinds of rare metal ores. The various dynasties more or less occupied some mines and territories in the ancient chaos wasteland. The second characteristic of the ancient chaos wasteland was that it was chaotic. Not only were there many bandits, but there were also many ferocious demonic beasts. Therefore, it had always been a place of tempering for the geniuses of the various dynasties. As for the origin of this mission, it was because several martial artists of the Sword Dynasty had discovered a mysterious mineral deposit. There seemed to be some sort of secret hidden within. However, that mine was not only discovered by the Sword Dynasty, but also the War God Dynasty, the Mola Dynasty, the Tyrannical Saber Dynasty, and the other dynasties. Do you have any information on these dynasties? Yiguchin asked. Yes. The disciple handed Yiguchin another scroll. Yiguchin glanced around and understood what was going on. Although the Sword Dynasty was temporarily the first of the 100 dynasties in the South Horizon region. However, the second-ranked War God Dynasty, the third-ranked Mola Dynasty, and the fourth-ranked Tyrannical Saber Dynasty were not much weaker than the Sword Dynasty. They all had more than double digits of false saint experts. In comparison, the Sword Dynasty was currently facing internal and external troubles and might not be able to intimidate these dynasties. No wonder this mission is classified as difficult. It's because the top geniuses of these dynasties might appear. Yiguchin pondered. It was just like the Sword Dynasty had the sword ranking. The War God Dynasty had the War God ranking, the Mola Dynasty had the Blood ranking, and the Tyrannical Saber Dynasty had the Saber ranking. This time, the mysterious mineral deposit had been discovered in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, and the geniuses of these dynasties might appear. Therefore, this mission was classified as difficult. Yiguchin finally understood why 3 Gold Emblem disciples were required to go on this mission at the same time. It was also a precaution. Senior brother Dugu, why don't we just forget about it? Wait a few more days. Perhaps there will be other difficult missions. The disciples still wanted to persuade him. The mission in the ancient Chaos Wasteland was dangerous to begin with, and the geniuses of other dynasties might appear. It was also Yiguchin's first mission, and he was left behind. In the disciples' opinion, Yiguchin might not even be able to return alive, let alone complete the mission. I've made up my mind. Goodbye. Yiguchin nodded and left. Even without Ling Moyin and Jiang Yan, Yiguchin was prepared to complete the mission alone. To Yiguchin, who had experienced many dangers, this level of danger was really not worth mentioning. Soon, Yiguchin rode on a red-crowned crane that Sacred Cliff College reared as a means of transportation and left Sacred Cliff College. He flew towards the ancient Chaos Wasteland. Not long after Yiguchin left, 2 elders stood on a mountain peak in Sacred Cliff College. It was Elder Ime and Bei Xian Elder. Bei Xian Elder wanted to say something, but hesitated. Elder, are we really going to let Dugu Wubai go to the ancient Chaos Wasteland alone? It was obvious that Bei Xian Elder was also worried about Yiguchin's safety. Isn't this a good opportunity for him to train? Elder Ime was not worried at all. But I heard that the prodigies of the War God Empire, Maluo Empire, and other factions will also appear. Will it? Bei Xian Elder was still worried. Relax. Elder Ime smiled faintly. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. You don't even know the true identity of Dugu Wubai. If we really knew, then the ones who would be worried wouldn't be Dugu Wubai, but the prodigies of the other empires. At the same time, after Yiguchin left, Ouyang Tianji sat cross-legged in his cave and secretly sent a message. Big brother, you must avenge me this time. Ouyang Tianji said coldly, his tone full of hatred. Don't worry, I'm also going to the ancient Chaos Wasteland this time. Dugu Wubai is just a clown. This was the message from the Jade Slip. That's good. Ouyang Tianji's face was full of vengeance as he sneered. Dugu Wubai, I'll definitely make you pay the price for this trip to the ancient Chaos Wasteland. Thousands of miles north of Sacred Cliff College, two red-crowned cranes flew across the sky. They were the demonic beasts raised by Sacred Cliff College. Two figures sat cross-legged on the two red-crowned cranes. They were Ling Moyin and Jiang Yan. Ling Moyin was wearing a black dress that outlined her slender figure. She frowned slightly. Isn't it a little inappropriate for us to do this? Ling Moyin was slightly hesitant because they had left a few days earlier and left Yiguchen behind. Senior Sister Ling, what are you worried about? Do you think that Dugu Wubai would dare to go to the ancient Chaos Wasteland alone without us? Jiang Yan sneered. It was Jiang Yan's idea to leave Yiguchen behind. He wanted to give Yiguchen a show of strength. Hearing this, Ling Moyin nodded slightly. The ancient Chaos Wasteland was incomparably dangerous. According to her assumption, Yiguchen would not set off alone. But this mission is not that simple, Ling Moyin said. Senior sister, don't worry. The two of us are enough for this mission. Moreover, we can use this opportunity to suppress Dugu Wubai's arrogance. Senior sister, you should be happy to see this, Jiang Yan said. Ling Moyin was speechless. She had agreed to Jiang Yan's proposal because she wanted to polish Yiguchen's arrogant character and make him restrain himself. Dugu Wubai, your talent is excellent, but your character is too arrogant. I hope that this time, you can stay in the college and reflect on yourself. Ling Moyin sighed inwardly. Chapter 936. Ling Moyin and Jiang Yan did not know. Yiguchen, whom they thought would not follow, was already heading towards the direction of the ancient Chaos Wasteland by himself. Several days later, Yiguchen finally arrived at the edge of the ancient Chaos Wasteland on his crane. Yiguchen sat cross-legged on the back of the crane, gazing into the distance. As far as the eye could see, the distant horizon was a wasteland, showing a kind of lifeless sandy yellow. The wind that blew against his face seemed to carry a slight smell of blood. Obviously, the ancient Chaos Wasteland was not a good place. But for Yiguchen, who was used to seeing great storms, such a dangerous place could not make him feel the slightest bit of fear. Yiguchen landed at the edge of the wasteland. If he were to fly in the air in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, he would probably immediately be targeted by countless bandits. There is still a long way to go to the mysterious mineral deposit. Yiguchen muttered, stepping into the ancient Chaos Wasteland. On the wasteland, the wind and sand were fierce, and there were almost no plants. From time to time, there would be some empty mines, standing tall and bare. After another 2 days, Yiguchen finally entered the depths of the ancient Chaos Wasteland. In these 2 days, Yiguchen also encountered many bandits, or martial practitioners from other dynasties. With Yiguchen's current strength, dealing with these people was naturally easy. And just as Yiguchen continued to carefully advance in the wasteland, the sound of fighting suddenly came from not far ahead. There is movement. Yiguchen's eyes darkened, and his body approached a sand dune, looking over. In his line of sight, 4 figures appeared. The 4 figures, 2 men and 2 women, from their clothes, should be of extraordinary birth, like the genius disciples of the dynasties. The 4 figures were currently surrounded by a dense pack of monster beasts. These monster beasts were 30 feet long, shaped like earthworms, with sandy yellow scales on the surface of their bodies. They had no eyes, and their heads only had spiral-shaped sharp teeth, from which some corrosive liquid was spat out from time to time. It's the death worms. Yiguchen's eyes narrowed. Before coming to the ancient Chaos Wasteland, he had read the relevant information. In the ancient Chaos Wasteland, the most feared thing was not the bandits, nor the people of the various dynasties, but the monster beasts, the death worms. These death worms, in large numbers, could sneak into the ground to launch a sneak attack, and it was impossible to guard against. The scales on the surface of their bodies were as hard as metal, and had the effect of resisting true chi attacks. All of these characteristics made the death worm a demonic beast that everyone in the ancient Chaos Wasteland would turn pale at the mention of. And the 4 people in front of them were trapped by the death worms were hordes. With a glance, Yiguchin estimated there were at least 20 to 30 of them. Every death worm was the heaven and the heaven-earth spirit realm, peak. However, among the 4 of them, the one with the highest cultivation was only at stage 9, and the one with the weakest cultivation was at stage 7. Shrink into a defensive circle and hold on. Among the 4 of them, a white-clothed woman yelled. She was tall and slender, and her black hair was held up by a jade hairpin. She exuded a classical aura, as if she had walked out of a landscape painting. Even though she was in danger, she was still fearless. Hers was at the heaven and earth spirit bridges. Damn it, we're so unlucky. Among the 4, there was a heaven and earth spirit bridge prodigy at the heaven and earth spirit bridge. He was a man in a light purple robe, and he looked quite luxurious. But at this moment, the man's was not looking good. Brother Yang, we won't die here, right? A woman in a red dress with a seductive appearance said with a pale face, her delicate body pressed against the man. Hers was the lowest, We'll count ourselves unlucky. The last person was a strong youth with If we don't break out and delay any longer, more death worms will gather. The woman in white frowned. Damn it. The man in the light purple robe's face darkened. He came from an extraordinary background, and he did have a protective treasure on him, but it was of great use and could not be wasted here. Yiguchin looked at the 4 from the sand dune not far away, and there was not much change in his expression. There were people dying all the time in the ancient chaos wilderness, and Yiguchin was definitely not a nosy saint. The life and death of others had nothing to do with Yiguchin. Even if the 4 of them came from a good background, Yiguchin had no intention of befriending them. After thinking for a while, Yiguchin did not stay any longer. His figure flashed, and he was about to go around the trapped woman in white and continue to move forward. However, at this moment, the woman in white who was struggling to resist moved hers divine sense, as if she had sensed something. She faced Yiguchin's direction and shouted, "Who is it? Can you help me?" "You actually sensed it?" Yiguchin stopped in his tracks. He was slightly surprised. The woman's divine sense was quite sharp. As soon as the woman in white spoke, the other 3 also reacted. The man in the light purple robe had a look of joy on his face, and he shouted, "I am Yang Haoye, the 8th prince of the great Qian dynasty. I hope you can help me." "I will definitely thank you." The great Qian dynasty. Yiguchin's eyes were strange. Yiguchin did not know much about the great Qian dynasty, but he had heard of it. Among the 100 great dynasties of the South Horizon region, the great Qian dynasty could be ranked in the top 10. Even if it was not as good as the Sword dynasty, the War God dynasty, the Moro dynasty, and so on, it was not bad. At least, it was not inferior to the Phoenix dynasty, the Purple Glory dynasty, and so on that Yiguchin had come into contact with before. Unfortunately, Yiguchin was still indifferent. He was already a gold emblem disciple of one of the 5 great academies of the Sword dynasty, so he really did not care about the great Qian dynasty's prince's reward. Seeing that Yiguchin did not show any signs of helping, the 8th prince became anxious. The 8th prince named Yang Haoye also became anxious and shouted, "Brother, to tell you the truth, this prince has obtained a secret mine, and there may be extremely precious mica in it." Hearing the mention of mica, Yiguchin, who was about to leave, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Mica, recorded in the Heavenly Works mineral collection, was an extremely precious and rare material. Not only could it perfectly fuse with various metals to repair defects, but it could also increase the success rate of forging and the quality of divine weapons. In fact, Yiguchin had always wanted to repair the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, but unfortunately, he did not have the ability for the time being, and he could not find suitable materials. And mica was undoubtedly the best material. Seeing Yiguchin stop, Yang Haoye's eyes changed and he said again, "Not only that, there may even be millennium-old mica in that secret mine. As long as you are willing to help, we are willing to share it." Millennium-old mica. Yiguchin was tempted. Millennium-old mica was even rarer, and it was a material used to forge some high-grade and supreme-grade divine weapons. Above that was the nearly extinct millennium-old mica, which was equivalent to a divine material. The only divine material Yiguchin had was the 9 orifices divine stone. Yiguchin did not think about millennium-old mica. Even millennium-old mica was enough for him to help this time. How do I know that you are not lying? Yiguchin finally responded. We are not lying. Before Yang Haoye could speak, the woman in the white dress spoke. The woman in the white dress had a pair of beautiful obsidian-like eyes, and there was calmness in them. Yiguchin thought for a moment and directly attacked. Chapter 937. I will open a gap for you to escape. Yiguchin flipped his wrist and a long sword appeared in his hand. However, it was not the 9-dragon thunder prison. Yiguchin had always been on guard against strangers. After all, the 9-dragon thunder prison was a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon. It was hard to guarantee that Yang Haoye and the others would not be suspicious. Coincidentally, when Yiguchin became a Gold Emblem disciple, he had received a supreme-grade mystical pattern divine weapon. Yiguchin took it out to use at this moment. Hearing Yiguchin's words, Yang Haoye and the others were overjoyed. The white-clothed woman also heaved a sigh of relief. However, when they saw Yiguchin revealing the aura of a level 5 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth, the joy in their eyes turned into doubt. Only a level 5 spiritual bridge of heaven and earth? Yang Haoye's eyes narrowed slightly. Yiguchin did not completely unleash the genuine qi of his sea of qi. He was still on guard against Yang Haoye and the others and did not reveal his full strength. Yiguchin swung his sword and the sword light swept across like a river of stars. It was the move of the 3 ultimate sacred swords, the star-breaking sword. The sword light swept across like a river of stars and swept towards the group of death worms, temporarily opening a gap. Yang Haoye, the white-clothed woman and the others who were trapped did not hesitate and rushed towards the gap. If they were late by a step, they would be surrounded by the death worms again. After Yiguchin swung his sword, his figure also retreated quickly and was not implicated by the death worms. Hiss! The group of death worms emitted extremely ear-piercing sound waves and rolled in the sand. Obviously, Yiguchin's sudden attack had caused the whole group of worms to fall into chaos. Taking advantage of the chaos, Yang Haoye and the others broke out of the encirclement and finally rushed out of the encirclement of the death worms. After flying for hundreds of miles, Yang Haoye and the others stopped, panting and adjusting their genuine qi. Not long after, Yiguchin appeared and stood in front of Yang Haoye and the others. The atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Yang Haoye's eyes flickered. Yiguchin was the same as them, a 9th-level spirit bridge of heaven and earth. Perhaps Yang Haoye would think highly of Yiguchin and treat him with caution. However, he was only at the 5th level of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth. He was even weaker than the weakest of the 4, the seductive woman in the red dress. The right to speak was under the condition that both parties were equal in strength. There was no equality between the strong and the weak. Yiguchin's expression remained indifferent as he looked at Yang Haoye's faintly changing gaze. However, a cold glint flashed across his pitch-black eyes. Yiguchin was not a kind person. If Yang Haoye went back on his words, regardless of whether he was the 8th prince of the Great Qian dynasty, Yiguchin wouldn't care. Just as the atmosphere was stagnant, the white-clothed woman with a classical beauty spoke, "My name is Su Jiqing. I come from the Cloud Billow dynasty. Thank you for your help, young master." The woman named Su Jiqing had an indifferent and distant temperament. She was as cold as smoke. Her aloofness was not like Yu Shuangyan's aloofness, nor was it like Ling Moyin's harshness. Instead, it was as if she was born with such a calm and indifferent personality. The Cloud Billow dynasty. Yiguchin murmured. Among the 100 great dynasties, the Cloud Billow dynasty's ranking was also extremely high, being ranked 9th. My name is Lu Ru. I come from the Mountainous Sea dynasty, the seductive woman in the red dress said faintly with a hint of arrogance in her voice. The mountainous Sea dynasty was slightly inferior to the Cloud Billow dynasty and the Great Qian dynasty, but it was also ranked in the top 20. The last strong youth was from the Great Zhou dynasty. His name was Zhou Yan. Yi Guqin understood that Yang Haoye, Su Jiqing, and the others were training together in the ancient Chaos Wasteland and accidentally found a secret mine. On the way to the secret mine, they were besieged by death worms. They were then met by Yi Guqin and rescued. "Brother, may I know your name and which dynasty you come from?" After the crisis was completely resolved, Yang Haoye recovered his high and mighty status as a prince and asked calmly. "That's right. Where did this little brother come from?" The seductive woman called Lu Ru chuckled and said with a hint of contempt in her voice. The few of them all came from a flourishing dynasty. They naturally looked down on Yi Guqin even more since he came from a small dynasty. Yi Guqin sneered in his heart as he looked at Yang Haoye and the others who had changed their attitude almost instantly. He said faintly, "I'm Dugu Wubai from the Sword Dynasty." "What? The Sword Dynasty?" Yang Haoye and the others were shocked when they heard Yi Guqin's words. Their eyes were filled with extreme bewilderment as they looked at Yi Guqin. Even Su Jiqing, who had a calm temperament, revealed surprise in her eyes as she stared deeply at Yi Guqin. The Sword Dynasty, the leader of the South Horizon region's 100 great dynasties, was too famous. Even in the ancient Chaos Wasteland, the Sword Dynasty controlled an extremely vast territory. Moreover, the prodigies of the Sword Dynasty were not weak. Especially the prodigies of the Sword ranking, who were feared by the other dynasties. However, in the eyes of Yang Haoye, Su Jiqing, and the others, even if Yi Guqin was from the Sword Dynasty, his cultivation was only at the 5th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. It was impossible for him to be a prodigy of the Sword ranking. So Brother Dugu is from the Sword Dynasty. Yang Haoye's expression was slightly serious. It was as if he was a completely different person from before. Lu Ru and Zhou Yan also withdrew their contemptuous expressions. Looking at the expressions of Yang Haoye and the others, Yi Guqin knew that they did not know the name of the Sword Demon. After all, Yi Guqin had risen not long ago. Although his reputation in the Sword Dynasty was great, it had not spread to the other dynasties. It was understandable that Yang Haoye and the others did not know. If they knew that Yi Guqin was ranked 10th on the Sword ranking, they would be even more afraid. "Brother Dugu, could it be that you're from the Sword Dynasty's 5 great colleges?" Yang Haoye continued to probe. "I am from Sacred Cliff College." Yi Guqin nodded. Yang Haoye, Su Jiqing, and the others all looked at Yi Guqin's chest at the same time. When they saw that Yi Guqin's chest was empty, Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They were also aware of the rankings of the 5 great colleges' disciples. Generally speaking, Gold Emblem disciples could not be provoked too much. That's right, with his 5th stage strength, how could he be a Gold Emblem disciple from the 5 great colleges? Yang Haoye laughed in his heart. Since he was not a Gold Emblem disciple, Yang Haoye did not need to be overly cautious. After all, he was also a prince of a country. Looking at Yang Haoye and the others' expressions, Yi Guqin knew what they were thinking. However, Yi Guqin did not point it out, it was just that he was not wearing a gold emblem. "Can we go to the secret mine now?" Yi Guqin asked. Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, Zhou Yan, and the others looked at each other with hesitation. Although Yi Guqin was from the Sword Dynasty, he was neither a sword-ranking genius nor a gold emblem disciple. Therefore, in Yang Haoye and the others' eyes, he was not as intimidating as before. Looking at Yang Haoye and the others' hesitation, Yi Guqin's expression turned cold. At this time, Su Jiqing spoke, "Of course, since young noble is willing to help, we should return the favor." "Jiqing, this..." Yang Haoye hesitated. "No need to say any more, young noble, let's go." Su Jiqing smiled faintly. "Many thanks." Yi Guqin cupped his hands in salute. Su Jiqing did not say anything else and led Yi Guqin away. Behind them, Yang Haoye's expression darkened with a hint of coldness. "Big brother Yang, look at that Su Jiqing, really. Lu Ru said as her delicate body pressed against Yang Haoya's body. Keep up. Yang Haoya said solemnly as he pushed Lu Ru away. Lu Ru's expression changed slightly as she looked at Su Jiqing's back with a trace of jealousy and hatred. It was obvious that this small group of four was not so harmonious. Chapter 938. After that, Yi Guqin, led by Su Jiqing, headed to the secret mine. Along the way, Su Jiqing and Yi Guqin discussed some topics related to the way of the sword. Although Su Jiqing was not a member of the Sword Dynasty, she also used a sword. Therefore, she got along quite well with Yi Guqin. This made Yang Haoya's eyes a little hazy. Su Jiqing was born in a noble family of the Cloud Billow Dynasty, and her background was not weak. Yang Haoya had always been interested in Su Jiqing, and he also had the idea of getting close to Su Jiqing on this trip to the ancient Chaos Wasteland. If possible, it would be best if he could win her over. Unfortunately, Su Jiqing's personality was cold and her strength was not weak, so Yang Haoya could not force her. As for Lu Ru, she liked Yang Haoya. Unfortunately, she was inferior to Su Jiqing in terms of status, cultivation, and appearance. Therefore, she could not win Yang Haoya's favor. 2 days later, Yi Guqin finally saw the secret mine that Su Jiqing and the others had mentioned. The secret mine was located in a mountain range and was surrounded by weeds. There was a cave hidden in the depths of the mountain. The entrance of the cave was deep and serene, like the mouth of a beast. That's the secret mine where the mica is hidden, Su Jiqing said in a low voice. Oh, is there a monster in the secret mine? Yi Guqin couldn't help but ask when he saw the cautious appearance of Su Jiqing and the others. There may be a stage 6 death worm king in the secret mine, Yang Haoya said in a slightly cold voice. The reason why they did not use their trump cards when they were surrounded by the death worms was to deal with the stage 6 death worm king that might appear in the secret mine. A stage 6 monster. Yi Guqin frowned. A stage 6 monster was equivalent to the divine dwelling stage of the human race. It was no wonder that Su Jiqing, Yang Haoya and the others looked as if they were about to face a great enemy. However, for Yi Guqin, even if he could not defeat a 6th-ranked demonic beast, he could at least retreat from it calmly. Brother Dugu, that secret mine is very dangerous. Are you sure you want to enter? Yang Haoya suddenly asked. Lu Ru and Zhou Yan simultaneously looked at Yi Guqin. Obviously, in their eyes, with Yi Guqin's strength, even if he entered the secret mine, he would only be a burden. Su Jiqing was also slightly hesitant. She did not despise Yi Guqin for being weak, but she felt that it might be dangerous for Yi Guqin to enter. Young master, there might be great danger in the mine. Su Jiqing said hesitantly. You don't have to worry about me when the time comes. Yi Guqin smiled calmly. Since he had encountered this secret mine, how could Yi Guqin give up on entering? As long as there was the slightest possibility of the existence of 1,000-year-old mica, Yi Guqin would not miss it. Since Brother Dugu asked so, then let's go together. But we might not be able to take care of you when the time comes. Yang Haoya smiled indifferently. Although Yi Guqin helped them out, Yang Haoya and Lu Ru did not have a good attitude towards Yi Guqin. The weak were naturally looked down upon. Yi Guqin did not say anything, his eyes indifferent. Soon, the few of them held their breaths and entered the secret cave. As soon as they entered, Yi Guqin felt a cold and gloomy air. The cave was deep and dark. After they went 100 feet in, they found that there were many strange glowing ores around them. Copper peacock stone, fluorite, illusory crystal iron. Yi Guqin muttered to himself. There were many rare ores in this secret mine. Young master knows so much about metal ores. Do you dabble in forging as well? Su Jiqing was slightly surprised. You could say so. Yi Guqin smiled. Forging was a sideline for him. So Brother Dugu is a forging master. No wonder his cultivation is slightly mediocre. Most of his energy is spent on forging. Seeing Su Jiqing and Yi Guqin talking, Yang Haoya felt a knot in his heart and could not help but speak with some sarcasm. Yang Haoye, that's enough. Young Master Dugu helped us out. Hearing Yang Haoye's words, Su Jiqing frowned. Yang Haoye was silent, but the coldness in his eyes became more and more condensed. After a while, Yi Guqin and the others also went deep into the secret mine. Suddenly, there was a hissing sound in front of them. There seemed to be something wriggling in the underground soil. Everyone stopped in their tracks. Su Jiqing flipped her jade sword, and a strong surge of genuine qi condensed in her body and then gathered on the blade of her sword. She stabbed her sword, and thick, turbid blood spurted out from the soil. Su Jiqing's sword directly pierced through a death worm. It seems that they were holding back before. Yi Guqin saw this scene and thought to himself. Previously, even if he did not make a move, Su Jiqing and the others would have the ability to break through if they were forced into a desperate situation. They just did not want to waste their energy at that time. Everyone, be careful. Su Jiqing whispered. After a while, some light white ores appeared on the walls of the cave ahead. It's mica. Yang Haoye and the others' eyes lit up. This mica was really the rare ore they were looking for. However, most of these mica were hundreds of years old. Although they were rare, they were not the most precious. In the deepest part of the secret mine, there must be thousand-year-old mica. Yang Haoye became more and more certain. Then, everyone began to collect the mica. Although these mica were only hundreds of years old, they were still rare treasures. Yi Guqin also collected some, but these mica were not of much help to repair the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. At least 1,000-year-old mica was needed to repair the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Everyone collected mica along the way and went deep into the secret mine. Along the way, 1 or 2 death worms would occasionally appear, but they were all dealt with. Stop! Su Jiqing suddenly said in a low voice. Everyone immediately stopped. Because in front of them, there were 7 or 8 death worms coiled like snakes, as if they were resting. The aura of those death worms was at the peak of rank 5, which was equivalent to 7 or 8 experts at the peak of rank 9 Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth. More importantly, among the death worms, there were a few pieces of snow-white ores. 1,000-year-old mica. Yang Haoye and the others' breathing quickened. Yi Guqin's eyes also focused. Follow the plan, go. Su Jiqing and the others did not hesitate and directly attacked. At this time, they did not hold back and fully displayed their strength. Yang Haoye's body was covered in a blazing purple-red flame, which spread toward those death worms. Rare fire of heaven and earth? Yi Guqin did not expect that Yang Haoye also had a rare fire of heaven and earth. The power that the death worms were most afraid of was rare fire and rare thunder. Not only that, Yang Haoye also took out a long flaming saber. The power sealed in it was released, and the power of each slash was incomparably strong. In addition, Zhou Yan, Lu Ru, and Su Jiqing also used their own methods. Yi Guqin was the most idle one, so he did not make a move. Soon, under the trump cards of Su Jiqing, Yang Haoye, and the others, the 7 or 8 death worms were also eliminated. Yang Haoye and the others also collected the 1,000-year mica. Young Master Dugu, this piece is yours. Su Jiqing handed a piece of 1,000-year mica to Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin did not stand on ceremony and accepted it directly. Yang Haoye and the others frowned slightly, but since Su Jiqing gave it to him personally, they could not say anything. Looks like we're lucky this time and did not encounter the rank 6 Death Worm King. Zhou Yan smiled. That shouldn't be. Su Jiqing pondered. At this time, Su Qingyu's voice sounded in Yi Guqin's mind. There's something good behind that rock wall, could it be? Yi Guqin's mind moved. He thought for a moment and did not send Su Jiqing and the others away. Because Yi Guqin's guess was right, the rank 6 Death Worm King was behind that rock wall. And the thing that the rank 6 Death Worm King was guarding was not as simple as the 1,000-year mica. Chapter 939. Wait. Yi Guqin suddenly said. What's wrong? Su Jiqing looked at him in confusion. There's something strange behind this rock wall, Yi Gu-chin said. He placed his hand on the rock wall and gently knocked on it. A crisp sound was heard. Su Jiqing was surprised. She released her spiritual energy to sense, and her face froze. She held the sword in her jade-like hand and thrusted it towards the cliff. The entire rock wall was instantly covered with cracks, and then it collapsed. As the gravel and dust filled the air, a deep and serene passageway appeared, and a fishy stench assaulted their nostrils. Everyone, be careful. Su Jiqing's eyes focused. Even Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, and the others became alert. Everyone walked into the passageway. 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, finally, they reached the end of the passage. Vaguely, a ball of milky white light spread out and shone on the faces of Yi Gu-chin and the others. The source of the milky white light was a milky white or about the size of a human head. There seemed to be a milky white liquid sealed in the ore. It looked very strange. What is that? Mica? Su Jiqing, Yang Haoye, and the others were puzzled. They didn't know much about ores. However, Yi Gu-chin's eyes were filled with surprise. Faintly, there was a blazing heat surging within. Could that be millennial mica? Zhou Yan's eyes were filled with surprise, and he whispered. What? Millennial mica? Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, and the others were shocked. Millennial mica was extremely precious and rare. Millennial mica was an extremely rare material that was second only to divine materials. Yi Gu-chin's eyes flashed. Zhou Yan only knew one thing, but not the other. The milky white ore in front of them was indeed millennial mica. However, the most precious part was not the millennial mica itself. It was the milky white liquid sealed in the millennial mica. I didn't expect there to be mica spirit containing saliva in this millennial mica. Even with Yi Gu-chin's personality, his breathing was a little hurried at this moment. Although the 10,000-year mica was precious, it was still slightly inferior to sacred materials like the 9-orifice divine stone. However, the mica spirit containing saliva was a genuine divine material. Its greatest use was not only to increase the success rate of forging and the quality of divine weapons. Most importantly, it could give the forged weapon a trace of spirituality. If this sliver of spirituality was paired with the 9 orifices divine stone that could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on its own, Yi Gu-chin was certain that the sword he forged in the future would be a famous sword with a high level of spirituality. He might even be able to possess a trace of his own consciousness. Therefore, Yi Gu-chin was determined to obtain the 10,000-year mica and the mica spirit containing saliva. 10,000-year-old mica, it really is 10,000-year-old mica. Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, Zhou Yan, and the others' eyes turned red. Even someone as cold as Su Jiqing could not help but be tempted. In the face of such a supreme treasure, no one could hold themselves back. Let's go. Without any hesitation, Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, Zhou Yan, and the others shot out like arrows and swept towards the 10,000-year mica. There was only one piece of the 10,000-year mica. Obviously, it was impossible to divide it equally. Therefore, it was now a matter of who could get the 10,000-year mica. Su Jiqing hesitated for a moment. Her divine soul was sharp and she vaguely felt that something was wrong. Yi Gu-chin did not act rashly. At this moment, there was a rock around the 10,000-year mica. It was shaped like a coiling dragon and snake, and the 10,000-year mica was in the center of the rock. However, just as Yang Haoye and the others approached the 10,000-year mica, the rock suddenly trembled violently and its surface cracked. An incomparably strong demonic aura and a fishy smell burst out, bringing with it a strong wave of energy. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, a strange beast raised its body. The rock on the surface of its body cracked and fell off. Its head, which had no eyes and only a sharp mouth like a knife, was facing Yang Haoye and the others. Hiss. Invisible sound waves turned into waves of ripples and spread out, as if they could shatter even gold and iron. Yang Haoye and the others trembled violently, blood flowing from their ears. Their faces were full of horror. Stage 6 Death Worm King. Terrified voices came from their mouths. This strange beast was the Stage 6 Death Worm King, which was comparable to the Divine Dwelling stage. Swoosh! The Death Worm King transformed into an afterimage and shot directly towards Yang Haoye and the others. Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, and the others were scared out of their wits and abruptly retreated. Zhou Yan's reaction was a little too late. His internal qi exploded and he frantically bombarded the Death Worm King. Puchi! Blood spurted out. Zhou Yan's body was caught by the Death Worm King's mouth and then directly crushed into countless blood flowers. Let's attack together. Yang Haoye roared. Lu Ru and Su Jiqing also attacked. At this moment, they had no choice but to use all their trump cards and go all out. Su Jiqing brought out a jade talisman. After crushing it, it burst out with a divine light and shot towards the Death Worm King. Yang Haoye and Lu Ru also revealed their trump cards. It was only now that they truly displayed their full strength. Yi Guqin also made his move, but he didn't use his trump card. Instead, he acted according to the situation. However, the Death Worm King was indeed powerful, and not on the same level as the previous Death Worms. The scales on the surface of its body had strong defensive power and offset most of the damage. Its mouth was constantly spewing corrosive acid, and coupled with the hissing sound wave attack, it was difficult for Su Jiqing and the others to deal with. They couldn't beat it. The hearts of Yang Haoye and the others sank. They thought they had made sufficient preparations, but they found that they were still no match for the Death Worm King. They glanced at the 10,000-year cloud jellyfish, feeling very unwilling. Just then, on the other side of the cave, the Death Worm King's sound waves seemed to have gathered the other death worms, and the death worms rushed towards them. Oh no, let's go. When Yang Haoye saw this scene, there was no longer any hesitation in his heart. He immediately rushed out of the cave, with Lu Ru following closely behind. Su Jiqing, on the other hand, had been fighting in front because she was the strongest. When she saw Yang Haoye and the others suddenly withdraw, her heart sank. All the pressure was on Su Jiqing's shoulders. Yang Haoye, you! Su Jiqing shouted coldly. Yang Haoye's expression was unnatural, but seeing the swarm of death worms gradually converging, he gritted his teeth and retreated quickly. Lu Ru followed closely behind, not leaving an inch behind. You! A trace of anger appeared on Su Jiqing's elegant face. Yang Haoye had been pursuing her, but at the critical moment of life and death, the fear of death immediately suppressed everything. Looking at the backs of the two flashing into the distance, Su Jiqing revealed a trace of sadness. She was now deeply trapped and couldn't escape. I'm sorry to have involved Mr. Dugu. Looking at Yi Guqin, who had been calm all along, Su Jiqing smiled dejectedly. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. It was difficult for her to block the attack of the Death Worm King. Yi Guqin's strength was at the 5th stage of the spirit bridge of heaven and earth, and he really couldn't help much. I can finally show my skills. Yi Guqin smiled casually. With a flip of his wrist, a long sword with a cold and sharp shape, with a burst of thunderous aura, fell into his hand. It was the 9-dragon thunder prison. Yi Guqin's aura at this moment changed, as if a sharp sword had been unsheathed, blooming with peerless sharpness. Chapter 940. Young Master Dugu. Su Jiqing looked at Yi Guqin, who seemed to have changed into a different person in an instant, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. At this moment, Yi Guqin gave her a feeling of extreme danger. Miss Su, if we work together, we may be able to kill the Death Worm King. Yi Guqin smiled and flipped the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand. Terrifying 9-colored thunderbolts burst out and turned into countless electric sparks that covered the entire cave. After sensing the terrifying destructive power of the 9-colored profound bomb, the death worms that wanted to surround them all retreated while hissing. They seemed to be extremely fearful. This is exotic thunderbolts? Su Jiqing looked surprised. Not only that, but the magic weapon in Yi Guqin's hand also attracted her attention. That fluctuation, a quasi-tribulation magic weapon. Even with Su Jiqing's cold and indifferent personality, she could not help but freeze. The surprise that Yi Guqin brought to her was too big. The terrifying destructive power of the nine-colored profound lightning struck fear into Su Jiqing's heart. Not to mention the quasi-tribulation magic weapon. It was a magic weapon that even a prince like Yang Haoye did not have. Dugawubai. Dugawubai. Su Jiqing muttered to herself, frowning. She vaguely felt that she had heard this name before, but she could not recall it at the moment. Yi Guqin had already made his move. The reason why he was so confident in dealing with the rank 6 Death Worm King was because he had exotic fire and exotic thunderbolts. This kind of power was the most effective against the Death Worms. At this moment, the Death Worm King's body was trembling violently and hissing. It seemed to be extremely fearful. The scales on the surface of its body could block most attacks, and even genuine qi could not cause too much damage. However, exotic fire and exotic thunderbolts could cause great damage to it. Yi Guqin performed the star-breaking sword technique. The vigorous sword qi merged with the explosive nine-colored thunderbolts and swept toward the Death Worm King. Su Jiqing also temporarily put aside her distracting thoughts and joined forces with Yi Guqin to attack. Hiss! The Death Worm King's body was writhing, and the scales on its body were scorched black and fell off. Obviously, the nine-colored profound bomb had caused great damage to it. Not only that, a pitch-black flame rose from Yi Guqin's eyes. On the surface of his body, apart from the power of the nine-colored lightning, there were also pitch-black flames rising. At this moment, lightning and fire intertwined around Yi Guqin's body, making him look incomparably domineering. Heaven and earth unique flame. Su Jiqing was speechless again. She could feel that the black flame in Yi Guqin's body was obviously stronger than Yang Haoye's strange flame. Kun Yu Absolute Sword. Yi Guqin raised his sword and used the second move of the three ultimates Holy Sword. The vigorous true qi in his body poured into the nine-dragon thunder prison, and this quasi-tribulation divine weapon began to display its true power in his hands. A beautiful cold moon appeared, bringing with it a sharp and powerful ripple. Accompanied by strange fire and thunder, it swept towards the Death Worm King. Not only that, Yi Guqin once again activated the Thunder Flood Dragon's soul in the nine-dragon thunder prison. A Thunder Flood Dragon's soul emerged from the sword, and its body was entwined with lightning. It transformed into a purgatory, temporarily imprisoning the Death Worm King, and bombarding it with endless thunder and lightning. So strong. Su Jiqing was slightly stunned, but she did not stay idle, and also used her strongest move. As a famous genius of the Cloud Billow dynasty, Su Jiqing was obviously not a flower vase. Rumble. The entire underground cavern seemed to be trembling. Under such a powerful attack, the Death Worm King's body cracked open, and stinking blood spurted out. Seeing this, Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. His sword move changed again, and above the nine-dragon thunder prison, an even more domineering thunder burst forth. The vigorous sword radiance condensed into a giant sword covered with thunder and lightning, and slashed at the Death Worm King. Divine Sword Thunder Manipulation Technique. The move that Yi Guqin used was the Divine Sword Thunder Manipulation Technique, an inferior royal-level sword technique that he had just learned. Although the Divine Sword Thunder Manipulation Technique was still a little bit away from the initial level, its power was extremely strong. Puff! The giant sword covered with thunder and lightning directly split the Death Worm King into two halves, and blood splattered out. It died just like that. Su Jiqing gasped, her chest rising and falling. She still seemed to be in disbelief. In a flash, Yi Guqin walked in front of the 10,000-year-old mica, and with a slash of his long sword, he took it. Looking at the 10,000-year-old mica in Yi Guqin's hand, Su Jiqing's eyes flashed, but she did not say anything. If Yi Guqin was not there, she might have lost her life. Moreover, Su Jiqing also had the 10,000-year-old mica, so it was not that she did not gain anything. Yiguchin did not stand on ceremony, and directly put the 10,000-year-old mica into the origin ring. He did not forget to forge a primordial sword that belonged exclusively to him. Along the way, Yiguchin also paid attention to collecting divine materials. Now, Yiguchin already had the 9-orifice divine stone, the mica spirit containing saliva, and the 10,000-year-old mica. But it was far from enough. Young Master Dugu, you are a real man. With the crisis of life and death resolved, Su Jiqing's heart relaxed, and she also revealed a faint smile, which was extremely beautiful. There are still death worms here, let's go out first. Yiguchin did not say much, and directly left in a flash. Looking at Yiguchin's back, Su Jiqing pouted, which was rare for her. This was not in line with her character. But Su Jiqing also saw a man who could ignore her like this for the first time. She stomped her feet, but still chased after him. At this moment, outside the secret mine, Yang Haoye and Lu Ru did not leave. Brother Yang, it seems that Su Jiqing has really died. Lu Ru seemed to be sad, but there was a trace of joy in her eyes. She had always been jealous of Su Jiqing, and now that Su Jiqing was dead, she naturally felt happy. Sigh. Yang Haoye sighed deeply. In fact, he still hoped that Su Jiqing could escape. As for Yiguchin, from the beginning to the end, no one cared whether he lived or died. Suddenly, Yang Haoye saw two figures appear at the entrance of the secret mine. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Yang Haoye could not believe his eyes. How is this possible? When she saw the two figures clearly, Lu Ru's delicate face also changed. Yang Haoye stepped out and rushed to Su Jiqing and Yiguchin's side. His expression was one of shock and bewilderment. He found it hard to believe that Su Jiqing and Yiguchin could survive the attack of the Death Worm King. Seeing Yang Haoye and Lu Ru coming over, Su Jiqing's expression was very cold, as if she was looking at strangers. Jiqing, you, that Death Worm King. Yang Haoye looked slightly embarrassed. Thanks to you, we came out alive. Su Jiqing's tone was sarcastic. Sister Jiqing, you can't say that. It was a crisis at that time, and it was a matter of life and death. No one could care about each other. Lu Ru was still quibbling. Hearing this, Su Jiqing's expression became even colder, and there was a hint of disgust. Yang Haoye's expression was slightly embarrassed, but he suddenly thought of something and said with a hint of urgency, you got the Millennium Mica? Chapter 941. Hearing Yang Haoye's words, Su Jiqing's expression changed slightly. She looked at Yiguchin from the corner of her eye and found that Yiguchin's expression remained calm. Looking at Su Jiqing and Yiguchin's expressions, Yang Haoye's breathing became more rapid, and his eyes burned with passion. He said, did you really get the 10,000-year-old mica? So. Yiguchin tilted his head and looked at Yang Haoye with interest. He wanted to see if Yang Haoye was going to attack him. The 10,000-year-old mica is in your hands. Yang Haoye's gaze suddenly sharpened as he stared at Yiguchin. 1,000-year mica was precious enough, but 10,000-year-old mica was almost comparable to a divine material. Even if he was a prince of a country, it was impossible for him to obtain such materials. Dugu Wubai, if it's really in your hands, then hand it over. We're the ones who shared this treasure with you. Don't be greedy. Lu Ru also chimed in. Oh, so you could easily abandon Miss Su and escape alone at the critical moment, and now you're asking for the 10,000-year-old mica? Yiguchin looked like he was smiling, but his eyes reflected coldness. You. Yang Haoye was speechless. He took a step forward, and the aura in his body surged as if he was about to attack. What are you doing? Su Jiqing saw this and shouted coldly, standing in front of Yiguchin. Although she knew Yiguchin's strength, she had to express her position at this moment. She was standing on Yiguchin's side. Jiqing, you. Yang Haoye's expression was uncertain. With Su Jiqing around, he could not do anything to Yiguchin. Let's put it aside for now. My brother is also in the ancient Chaos Wasteland. Although I'll have to give them a share, this is the only way. Yang Haoye thought to himself. He did not think that Yi Guqin had the strength to kill the Death Worm King, and most likely concluded that Su Jiqing had used some trump card. Sorry, I was rude. I heard that a mysterious mineral deposit has appeared in the depths of the wasteland. Perhaps we can travel together. Yang Haoye cultivated his aura and forced a smile. Yi Guqin looked deeply at Yang Haoye and did not say anything. Then, Yi Guqin, Su Jiqing, Yang Haoye, and Lu set out together. Along the way, Yang Haoye seemed to be waiting for something. He glanced at Yi Guqin from time to time. 10,000-year-old micas was too rare. Su Jiqing's eyes was faces, and Shi's was eyes. Inza's rights of eyes of eyes. Was eyes, he eyes, were not far from the mysterious mineral deposit, Yi Guqin muttered to himself as he gazed into the distance. It was at this moment that a stream of light suddenly flew over from the other side of the sky. As the splendor dissipated, a man in extraordinary clothes appeared. He looked somewhat similar to Yang Haoye. It's you, Yang Haoye. Why are you here? Su Jiqing was taken aback when she saw the man, and then, as though she suddenly thought of something, she turned to Yang Haoye. At this moment, Yang Haoye had finally removed his disguise, and his expression was cold and indifferent. Eighth brother, is what you said true, that this person has 10,000-year-old mica? The man named Yang Haoye asked indifferently. His cultivation was at the divine dwelling stage, and he was the third prince of the great Qian Empire. He was also training in the ancient Chaos Wasteland. After receiving Yang Haoye's message, he had rushed over. A piece of 10,000-year-old mica was enough to move his heart. Yi Guqin was a little surprised when he saw the faint divine dwelling pressure from Yang Haoye. Although the great Qian Empire was inferior to the Sword Dynasty, the War God Empire and the others, it was not weak either. To think that they even had a prince of the divine dwelling stage. However, Yang Haoye's aura was clearly not very solid, and it was obvious that he had only broken through to the divine dwelling stage not long ago. Yi Guqin did not need to be too afraid of an expert who had just entered the divine dwelling stage. Yang Haoye, what do you want to do? Su Jiqing's expression turned a little ugly. She did not expect Yang Haoye to be so despicable. Yang Haoye no longer concealed anything, and said in a condescending tone, an ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Hand over the 10,000-year-old mica, and perhaps I can spare your life. It's better to hand it over to Big Brother Yang. How can treasures be more important than our lives? Lu Ru also had a playful look on her face. The third prince, Yang Haoye, looked towards Yi Guqin and said indifferently, on account of your identity as a disciple of the Sword Dynasty Academy, I can spare your life. Hand over the 10,000-year-old mica. It's not something you should have. Oh, I shouldn't have it. Then who is qualified to have it? Even in the face of Yang Haoye, who was of the divine dwelling stage, Yi Guqin was still calm. At the very least, it should be a golden emblem disciple of the 5 great academies, or someone in the top 10 of the sword ranking who can make me fear them. Unfortunately, you're not, Yang Haoye said indifferently. Before he came, Yang Haoye had told him that although Yi Guqin was a disciple of the 5 great academies of the Sword Dynasty, he did not have any status, and his cultivation was only at the 5th stage. Heh! Yi Guqin laughed. Su Jiqing, who was at the side, gritted her teeth. Just as she made up her mind to protect Yi Guqin's origin ring flashed, and a golden emblem entered the eyes of Yang Haoye and the others. This is... Yang Haoye was stunned. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he stared at the golden emblem. Yang Haoye, Lu Ru, and even Su Jiqing's eyes froze at the same time. They could not be mistaken about the golden emblem. It was the golden emblem shared by all 5 great academies of the Sword Dynasty. It represented Yi Guqin's identity as a golden emblem disciple of the 5 great academies. The identity of a golden emblem disciple of the first dynasty was definitely not inferior to the nobles or princes of the other dynasties. Yang Haoye could not help but cry out, "What, with your cultivation, how can you be a golden emblem disciple?" Golden Emblem Disciple, Dugu Wubai. Su Jiqing murmured, as if recalling something. Oh. You have such an identity, but that's not enough. Yang Haoyu's expression changed slightly, but he was still calm. He was a divine-dwelling heaven pride and the high and mighty third prince. The identity of a Golden Emblem disciple was not enough to make him afraid. Oh, then what about this? Yi Guqin took out a sword-shaped emblem again. When he saw this sword-shaped emblem, even the calm Yang Haoyu's expression changed completely. Yang Haoye looked as if he had seen a ghost, and his heart felt as if it had been struck hard. No prodigy from a top empire would be able to mistake that token. Their elders had warned them countless times that it was best not to provoke a heaven pride who had such an emblem. Because, they could not afford to offend him. Sword. Sword. Sword Master Emblem. Yang Haoye stuttered, and his face was filled with shock. Lu Ru's delicate body trembled, and her face was deathly pale. The Sword Master emblem was a symbol of authority in the Sword Dynasty, and no one dared to fake it. If the Sword Dynasty found out about it, only death would await. Who are you? Yang Haoyu's expression was incomparably fearful. He was not afraid of Yi Guqin's cultivation, but of his identity. No, I don't believe it. You can't be the Sword Master of the Sword Dynasty. Yang Haoye shook his head and stared at Yi Guqin as if he was trying to see through him. Could it be? Young Master Dugu, you're the Sword Dynasty's new 10th on the Sword Leaderboard, Sword Demon Dugu Wubai. Su Jiqing's mind seemed to have been struck by lightning, and she abruptly recalled the news from before. The young heaven pride who had risen rapidly in the Sword Dynasty, Sword Demon Dugu Wubai. What, 10th on the Sword Leaderboard? Cold sweat broke out on Yang Haoye's forehead, and his legs gave way as he collapsed to the ground. He was scared out of his wits. Chapter 942. To the prodigies of the other dynasties, if one were to ask them what they feared the most, it would naturally be the prodigies of the top dynasties. For example, the Sword Dynasty's Sword ranking, the War God Dynasty's War God ranking, the Molo Dynasty's Blood ranking, the Tyrant Saber Dynasty's Saber ranking, and so on. The prodigies who were ranked on these rankings were all extremely dangerous. It was already surprising that Yi Guqin was ranked on the Sword ranking. However, the 10th place on the Sword ranking made Yang Haoye and the others tremble. Dugu Wubai. Are you that Dugu Wubai? Yang Haoye suddenly recalled. He had vaguely heard of the sword demon who rose in the Sword Dynasty. However, he did not expect it to be the young man in front of him. What? He's that sword demon. Lu Ru's face turned pale as she recalled her attitude toward Yi Guqin. Her delicate body trembled as she was afraid of Yi Guqin's revenge. Even though Yi Guqin's cultivation level was only at stage 5, Yang Haoyu, Yang Haoye, and the others were not foolish enough to think that Yi Guqin was only at that level. No wonder you killed the Death Worm King. Yang Haoye's face was extremely ugly. Sword Demon Dugu Wubai, ranked 10th on the sword ranking. Yang Haoyu was no longer as calm as before. After knowing Yi Guqin's true identity, he no longer had the right to put on airs in front of Yi Guqin. As for Su Jiqing, her mind was in a mess. Although she was a famous prodigy in the Cloud Billow Dynasty, she was nothing compared to the top 10 prodigies of the Sword Dynasty. Brother Dugu. It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. Yang Haoye forced a smile that was uglier than crying. As for Yang Haoyu, his expression was unnatural. Putting aside Yi Guqin's strength, he had the Sword Sun token. If Yang Haoyu did anything to Yi Guqin, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although the great Qian dynasty was not weak, they could not afford to offend the Sword Dynasty. Cut the crap, where's your sincerity? Yi Guqin said calmly. Hearing Yi Guqin's words, Yang Haoye's face twitched violently. How could he not know what Yi Guqin wanted? They would have to pay a price if they asked for Yi Guqin's forgiveness. I'll take these Millennial Cloud Mother as an apology to Brother Dugu. Yang Haoye's heart was bleeding as he handed over the Millennial Cloud Mother. Lu Ru was also trembling as she handed over her Millennium Mica. What else? Yiguchen was Yiguchen's Yi. Yang Haoye took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with humiliation, but there was nothing he could do. He had heard of Sword Demon Dugu Wubai's name before. Although his cultivation level was not high, his combat strength was extremely strong. Even if Yang Haoyu was there, they might not be able to stop Yiguchen. If they let Yiguchen escape, Yang Haoye and Yang Haoyu would definitely suffer. Here are 200,000 heaven crystals, please forgive us, Brother Dugu. Yang Haoye gritted his teeth. Yiguchen accepted it expressionlessly and looked at Yang Haoyu. Yang Haoyu's eyes twitched as he took out a rare ore, the purple gold jade copper. Please forgive us for offending Brother Dugu. Yang Haoyu forced a smile. The purple gold jade copper was also a material used to forge heavenly tribulation divine weapons. It was helpful in repairing the 9-dragon thunder prison. Yiguchen accepted it without hesitation. If there's a next time, I'll ask for more than this. Yiguchen looked deeply at Yang Haoye. Then, he and Su Jiqing left. After the two of them left, Yang Haoye's expression became extremely ferocious. He had never experienced such humiliation before. Yang Haoye, you're really blind. You even dared to provoke the prodigy who ranked 10th on the Sword Dynasty's sword leaderboard. You even dragged me into this. Yang Haoyu's expression was extremely cold. Not only did he not get to eat the lamb, but he also got himself into trouble. Dugu Wubai, just you wait. The Sword Dynasty is not without opponents. If we meet again. Yang Haoye's expression was extremely cold. On the other side, Yiguchen and Su Jiqing continued to fly into the depths of the ancient chaos wasteland. Master Dugu, you really have a lot of hidden skills. Su Jiqing looked at Yiguchen with a deep gaze. That's nothing. What do you plan to do next? Yiguchen asked casually. I want to take a look at the mysterious mine. Su Jiqing said. It might be dangerous there, Yiguchen said. He had also received news that prodigies from top dynasties might appear. At that time, the situation would be extremely chaotic. Although Su Jiqing's stage 9 cultivation was not weak, it was definitely not top-notch either. I know. Su Jiqing's gaze was firm. That's good. Yiguchen did not say much. He had said all he wanted to say. Just as Yiguchen and Su Jiqing were flying toward the mysterious mine, winds and clouds were also surging in other directions. On a sand dune, two figures were flying quickly. They were two well-built men. One of them carried a long golden saber on his back, while the other carried a long silver saber on his back. If anyone was here, they would definitely recognize that these two were the famous prodigies in the Tyrant Saber dynasty, the Gold and Silver Saber duo. Big brother, I heard that the mysterious mine might be related to the secret of a lost dynasty. The man with the silver saber said. No matter what, we have to seize this opportunity. Otherwise, we will be surpassed by others sooner or later, the man with the golden saber said in a low voice. Indeed, the 7 lethal saber demon who recently rose in the Tyrant Saber dynasty is very fierce. The man with the silver saber thought of a certain figure, and there was still a trace of lingering fear in his eyes. That sloppy and destitute figure held a 7 lethal ancient saber and challenged 10 prodigies on the saber list in the Tyrant Saber dynasty. Unexpectedly, none of them were a match for him, and they were all defeated with one strike. Ah! Do you know Yiguchen from the Sword Sect? He once injured Di Haotian. That 7 lethal saber demon is the only one in the same generation who can injure Yiguchen, other than Di Haotian and Gu Xiaoyang. How can he not be powerful? Moreover, he was chosen by the Battle God Saber sect. He came to the Tyrant Saber dynasty to gain experience. The Gold and Silver Saber duo spoke as they flew toward the mysterious mine. On the other side, a man in golden armor and holding a golden spear flew across the sky like a golden meteor, heading toward the mysterious mine. Interesting, what kind of opponents will I encounter this time? The man's aura was wild, and he laughed heartily. In the southeast direction of the mysterious mine, a pink sedan chair appeared. 4 women in pink clothes carried the 4 corners of the sedan chair. Their faces were stiff, like puppets, and there was not a trace of expression. A corner of the sedan chair was faintly revealed, and a devilish man in pink clothes was sitting in it. He was from the Maluo dynasty. At the same time, in the southeast direction, a man in white clothes with a dignified appearance was flying across the void on a flying sword. He had the aura of a dragon and a tiger, and his every movement stirred the wind and clouds. If there were people from the Sword dynasty present, they would certainly cry out in shock. This imposing man in white clothes was the top divine dwelling heaven pride of the Ouyang family, Ouyang Fengyun, who was ranked 9th on the sword list. He was also the elder brother of Ouyang Tianji. Ah! Dugu Wubai, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. It seems that you still don't understand this principle. Ouyang Fengyun smiled faintly, but his eyes were filled with contempt. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.